Chris Pincher faces 6 new claims of inappropriate behaviour days after his suspension as a Tory MP.
Good morning. It's 6 o'clock on Sunday, the 3rd of July. This is Breakfast on GB News with Anne and Paul.
We are live across the whole of the UK, on your TV, on your radio, wherever you are. You can take us with you. Here's what you're waking up to this Sunday morning.
Former Tory Deputy Chief Whip Chris Pincher has said he is seeking professional medical support amid new allegations of inappropriate behaviour stretching back more than a decade. This all comes after he was suspended as a Tory following accusations he groped 2 men at a club in London when he was very drunk.
Also this morning, the Foreign Office has condemned the exploitation of prisoners of war after 2 more Britons were captured by Russian forces. Andrew Hill and Dylan Healy are now facing the possibility of a Russian death sentence for what Moscow describes as mercenary activities in the conflict.
And it's finally time for the British Grand Prix. Ferrari's Carlos Sainz, is that how I say it?
Carlos Sainz.
I think.
Sainz.
Well, apparently he snatched pole position in a soaking qualifying session yesterday, whilst the Brits Lewis Hamilton and Lando Norris will start 5th and 6th in today's blockbuster race.
As ever, you can join in any of our discussions, get involved. You can drop us a line, gbviews at gbnews.uk, or tweet us at gbnews.
And of course, you can subscribe to the GB News channel on YouTube to get all the latest on the big stories that we're all talking about.
Our top story.
Well, I was going to say, I think you can tell that I know nothing about Formula One and Grand Prix, because I don't know the names, I don't know how to pronounce them.
That's all right.
Yeah.
You know enough.
I don't think I
cars
do.
And they go around a track and that's it.
Well, that's all I've ever thought of.
Exactly.
That's I think, that's all it is. Why do they do it? Why do people watch it? Why do people go on about it? Well, we'll find out, because apparently there is a lot to talk about.
Indeed. But people are also talking about Chris Pincher this morning, facing more allegations of misconduct and inappropriate behaviour today following his suspension as a Tory MP.
And as we know now, it comes after the MP for Tamworth said he is now seeking professional medical support following these accusations of groping 2 men while intoxicated at the Carlton Club in London.
Chris Pincher quit as Tory Deputy Chief Whip on Thursday and will now be subject to an investigation which he claims he will fully cooperate with.
And as you can imagine, the Sunday newspapers are full of it at the moment. Lots more stories, lots more revelations, and I suppose it just begs the question is what happens next and what happens to him next. So let's get the latest from political commentator Lettice Bromovsky. Hello there, hi. It is a bit of a mess, and frankly, you could say the fact that it wasn't dealt with swiftly and sharply has resulted in this plethora of headlines in today's newspapers.
Yeah, completely. I mean, Boris has once again found himself at the centre of this scandal somehow. And the latest today, particularly good story on the front page of the Telegraph, although I know it's on a few others, is that he actually knew about Chris Pincher and these allegations long before this incident happened. So there's lots of levels to this, but one of the most important is that in February, when Mr Pincher was appointed, there was actually a lot of opposition within his own party. So Steve Barclay, the MP, came forward. Apparently, a cabinet minister also spoke out against this. But most importantly, a senior whip, Craig Whitaker, ended up resigning in opposition to this. This also comes off the back of the fact that Mr Pincher had allegations against him from previous years. So in 2017, there were allegations against him from Alex Storey, a former Olympian and former Tory candidate, that he had been inappropriate with him. And then there was another allegation in 2018. And I think it's pretty outrageous that he managed to find himself in the position of Deputy Chief Whip when people who were potentially expressing or having situations of sexual misconduct against them would have had to have gone to the whip to report this. And there was a man in this position who had multiple previous allegations of sexual misconduct against him.
I mean, can you explain to any of our viewers who don't really know what a whip does, why this, what the job is and why it is so inappropriate to give that job to somebody who's troubled themselves?
Well, exactly. I mean, the whip is essentially, the main roles is to be the bastion of behaviour and sort of ethics within the Tory party. So that was what he was there to do. And yet, on Wednesday night, as we saw, he was getting so drunk that he couldn't speak, he could barely walk, and he was having to be put in a taxi at 1 a.m. And then have multiple instances of people calling the chief whip to complain about his behaviour. So it just doubles down on how outrageous this is, that he was even in this position. And
he wrote a letter last night, or issued a statement, I should say, saying that he will cooperate with the investigation. And he repeated, you know, the statement that he was sorry for his behaviour, but he's not resigning.
No, he's not resigning. And you said earlier that he's going to try and seek help for this. You know, that's a good thing, definitely, but it's too little too late in this situation. What I thought was particularly outrageous was that we had Neil Parish yesterday, the MP who was forced to resign over watching pornography in the House of Commons, not once but twice. He was coming out to say that there was a double standard here. I'm not quite sure how we've managed to get ourselves into a situation where the spectrum of scandals coming out is whether it's Neil Parish at one end watching pornography or Imran Khan at the other end, who has now been charged conviction for sexually assaulting a child, and how we've got this whole...
I mean, frankly, none of them have the right to an opinion on this matter.
Exactly.
And I guess we should be very sure to make the point that the allegations against Chris Pincher are allegations,
yes,
not of drunkenness, because he admitted to that.
Yes.
But the allegations of sexual misconduct are at the moment just allegations.
Yeah.
But by the look of it, he has form on this sort of allegation.
Yeah, exactly. And again, it's putting the Conservatives in another huge predicament where they're essentially going to be forced into having another by-election. And after the disaster that was Tiverton and Wakefield, which were Tiverton in particular, it had a 21,000-seat majority, 20,000 voter majority, and it still swung to the Lib Dems. Right now we have Tamworth, which is Chris Pincher's seat, has a 19,000 majority. But I don't think any seat is safe at the moment.
Do you think that's why he hasn't resigned yet? Maybe he's under pressure to do the right thing, make all the right apologies, but actually not cause a by-election?
I mean, potentially, but I think a by-election at this point is inevitable. You've got even councillors from within the Tamworth constituency calling for him to resign, asking him to do the honourable thing. You've got an investigation into him, which from least of all the amount of eyewitnesses there were on the night, is most likely that he'll be found guilty of some sort of impropriety.
One interesting and probably a question I even shouldn't ask, but I'm going to anyway, is if the allegations had been about him groping women, would his resignation be absolutely have had to happen like that? The fact that it's against men, honestly, is not seen as almost quite so important.
I think the main reason why he has held on for so long is, in fact, because he is a devout Boris loyalist, and Boris does reward those people who are most loyal to him. We saw that first and foremost with Owen Paterson back in November last year. But he was instrumental in helping Boris in his Save Big Dog plan back in January. And I think that this is Boris sort of... It took him so long to even suspend the whip. It took till Friday night, so I think that's why. Just
very quickly, do you think that you've already said you think there will be a by-election? Are you talking about after the outcome of the investigation, or you think he'll just go before then?
I expect that he will resign before then at this point, yes. So I imagine there will be a by-election, another one coming up very soon.
Yeah.
Doesn't fill you full of confidence, does it, at the moment?
No, not
it's just
at all.
Like
not
dominoes
at all.
going down.
Yeah.
And in the most tawdry way. You know, the word
It's
sleaze. I
one
know that
scandal
Labour
after
bring up this
another.
word sleaze again and again and again, but it's beginning to stick, isn't it?
Yeah, completely.
Good to see you this morning. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Letters Bromovsky, their political commentator. Do let us know what you think. GBviews at GBnews.uk.
OK, let's bring you up to date with the headlines thus far then. The Prime Minister and the Chancellor have outlined what they're calling the single biggest tax cut in a decade, writing a joint article in the Sun. Sorry, I shouldn't have said that with a question mark in my voice. Yeah, well, they say Wednesday's rise in the national insurance threshold from just under £10,000 to just over 12.5 will save 30 million British workers up to £330 a year.
Elsewhere this morning, the government's spending watchdog is planning to investigate the Prime Minister's 2019 election pledge to build 40 new hospitals by the end of the decade. It's after the Shadow Health Secretary Wes Streeting warned the plans are a waste of taxpayers' money, with many hospitals having alterations or refurbishments instead of being actually new.
The government wants security checks on new airport workers to be treated as a priority to prevent travel delays this summer. Department of Transport claim that counter-terrorist checks are being processed in record times as shortages of baggage and security staff fuel hold-ups.
Cyberbullying may be playing a key role in keeping mortality rates high amongst people with asthma. This is a study from Nottingham University Business School. It says online abuse fuels a vicious cycle, meaning those with the condition trivialise it and can be less likely to take their medication.
So lots of questions to ask you to join in with us on today, but I just can't help asking you, have you finally had enough? I mean, if you're a true loyal Tory, is this yet again now beginning to make you change your mind? Have you had enough? Would you use the word sleaze now if you bumped into Boris Johnson in the street? Or do you still feel loyal to our Prime Minister? Isn't your loyalty being shaken at all at the moment? Or do you think it's being, well, I was going to say, do you think it's being hyped up? I don't see how it can be, because these things are happening and we're bringing the news to you. But I don't know, it does feel a bit much at the moment.
Yeah, but then again, you may think Boris Johnson's doing a really good job and he's rolled out the vaccine and unemployment's really low, and so none of this matters as much because he's still getting the job done and, as he would say, dealing with the people's priorities.
OK, well, on to another story, which is another sad turn of events. Two British nationals have been charged with mercenary activities in eastern Ukraine. The pair could now face the death penalty after reportedly being captured by Kremlin forces back in April.
Yeah, the Foreign Office has condemned the exploitation of prisoners of war and raised the issue with Russia. Joining us now to discuss this is security specialist Will Geddes. Will, good morning to you. First of all, are you surprised that more British nationals have been captured and are facing this situation?
No, I'm not entirely surprised. I mean, when we consider that there is a private military or independent contractor, you call them mercenaries if you wish, that are operating down there, of the foreign forces that have gone down to support Ukraine in various capacities, there is probably about 6,000 or 7,000 foreign nationals. Some have conscripted to the 36th Marine Ukraine Foreign Legion, and then there are lots of independents who are doing their own things, whether that be providing humanitarian support, evacuation support for families within Ukraine, or those others which fall within the fog of war.
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult one. Boris Johnson's shown such a lot of support towards Ukraine. I suppose inevitably, when they do realise they've got British or British-born prisoners anyway, the Russians are going to make the most of it, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's going to be a great PR advantage for them. However, you know, it is a little bit of pot calling kettle black when we consider that Russia has employed, albeit deniably, the Wagner Group, which is its own deniable mercenary operation to obviously carry out attacks there. But to have UK nationals in under whatever guise or capacity they were working within Ukraine, this is obviously a massive plus point for Russia.
Yeah, but the British government are in a bit of a bind in dealing with this, aren't they? Because if they start negotiating with Russia, then that's an admission that Russia is in charge of this part of Ukraine, when actually it's it's the People's Republic of Donbass.
Yes, exactly. It's a sort of a typical hostage situation, a hostage negotiation, where they may choose to use those individuals for prisoner release of their own personnel, their own soldiers, which have been captured by Ukraine forces, or, as you rightly say, to claim certain territories as their own and ask, obviously, the Ukraine, or demands Ukraine to concede those areas. The Donbass area and the whole Donetsk Republic is a very questionable area, and I think in the longer, bigger picture, there's every good chance that that might be annexed, like Crimea, but again, only time will tell.
It's very difficult when you see news reports from that region. The people who live there have entirely different views about what's happening. Some are actually pro-Russian and feel that the Ukraine has caused the whole problem, and others feel exactly the opposite. So you wonder how it's ever going to end up being peaceful.
Well, the only way potentially, and I mean, again, this is pure speculation on my part, is that an independent referendum could potentially be called in that region. And again, question of that referendum, if it is in fact obviously introduced, to decide whether it takes the same lead as Crimea did in terms of annexation. Individuals, foreign nationals which are operating down there, the British government have their hands unless those individuals are accredited or are tied to legitimate NGOs and non-governmental organisations, and, for example, providing food, humanitarian support, medical support, that sort of thing. Where we have the same sort of situation as we saw in the Bosnia conflict is that there are a lot of foreign fighters who are down there who are simply working in all sorts of capacities. Now, even bringing people out, if you are armed, if you're captured in Ukraine and you're carrying a firearm, then you will be seen as a combatant by the Russian troops.
Just finally, Will, is there anything more that the British government could do, in your opinion?
Well, at the moment, not a great deal. I mean, other than obviously, as I was mentioning, obviously see if they are associated to a particular accredited group or NGO that is deemed as non-combative. It's not unusual. You do have a lot of former military personnel that will go to conflict zones because of how to behave, how to react, how to operate in those zones, even not doing soldiering, if you like. So for the government, if these individuals are alone, they're on their own, they're doing their own thing, then it's going to be very, very difficult.
Well, we're sort of slightly losing the line to you at the moment, so we'll call it a day there. But thanks very much indeed for joining us so early in the morning anyway on a Sunday. Thanks very much, Will.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, it's a terrible situation there as well. But there's lots to talk about in the newspapers this morning. Of course, they were marking 50 years of Pride yesterday. Big sort of rallies and marches in various parts of the country. Big one in London yesterday. And I don't know if I can show you this picture from the newspapers today, but it shows the Labour leader and indeed the Labour deputy leader out joining the Gay Pride parade. And there we are, I can see it. And I just thought how funny it was that Angela Rayner knows how to throw herself totally into the mood. She's wearing a lovely rainbow flag. She's got her sneakers on, her trainers, which are apparently very special ones. And, you know, she's in the full colourful outfit and obviously enjoying every moment of it. And I just thought Keir Starmer looked so funny because he looks as though he's sort of like, you know, like Dad when he's dancing. Yeah. He looks as though, you know, I'm doing my best to show, you know, solidarity and, you know, but you know, it just looks so awkward.
When it comes to Dad dancing, I can empathise with him. So, you know, all dads have had that kind of awkward, you know, you want to be, you're being inclusive, yes. You're doing your best. You're
doing your best, but you still look like Dad.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Whereas Angela looks as though she's just thrown herself right into it, having a wonderful time. She knows how to do it. She's got a bit of gumption, I think, Angela Rayner, but Keir just looks a little bit awkward. But good for them both, you know, turning out and showing solidarity. I think that's lovely.
Indeed. It is 6:18 coming up next on GB News Breakfast. Good to have you with us this morning. We're going to be talking about how exercising could be the key to good mental health.
First of all, though, the weather. Right, looking ahead to today's weather, the UK is looking like another day of sunshine and showers, though some places will stay dry, so let's take a look at the detail. There'll be increasing amounts of sunshine across south-west England by lunchtime, with just a few lingering showers. Temperatures rising to 17 by midday. Light winds for all.
Sunny spells and scattered showers at lunchtime across southeast England and the London area. Still the odd heavy shower possible. Temperatures of 19 degrees Celsius.
To Wales now. Wales is going to see a mixture of sunshine and showers. Some could still be on the heavy side. Light winds and temperatures reaching 18 degrees.
Scattered showers for the Midlands, some possibly heavy in places. However, there will be plenty of sunny spells in between the showers, helping to lift temperatures to around 18 degrees Celsius, light winds as well.
North East England will see a mix of sunny spells and scattered heavy showers this lunchtime. Some sunshine developing at times too, temperatures slowly lifting to around 17.
It is a mixed picture for Scotland at midday. A mix of sunshine and showers, those heaviest and most frequent across the south of the country.
Scattered showers continuing for Northern Ireland, rather cloudy skies, but there will be some sunshine which will help lift temperatures to about 16. Little breezy along the north coast too.
Showers will clear eastwards through the rest of the day, allowing dry weather to move on. And that's how the weather is shaping up for the rest of Sunday.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV, on radio,
On digital, absolutely everywhere.
we don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We're trying to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Anne and Paul. Good to have you with us this morning. It's 6:22.
Yeah, now, Michelle, I want to say hello to Michelle.
Yeah.
She says, a very good morning from the beautiful Norfolk Broads, where I'm on holiday, and it looks like it's going to be a lovely day. Great show, guys. First time I've caught it at 6 a.m. on a Sunday. It's good at 6 a.m, isn't it? Because that's when we play the National Anthem, and it's one of our favourite bits, actually.
Yeah. That must be quite moving with the sun rising over the Norfolk Broads.
I know, I love that, yeah. Jim says, because obviously we've got lots of reaction already to the, what's happening in politics. And Jim says, groping, parties, pornography, sexual harassment. It's like the last days of the Roman Empire.
Yeah, Morning Mel says, let's have a by-election, get Lord Frost to stand and help sort things out. And Ian says, the whole House of Commons is covered in sleaze.
Yeah, not very nice image, is it, that? Stephen in Leicester says there's no doubt our Prime Minister is a jovial chap who would be good company in the pub. He, however, is not the statesman our country needs right now or deserves as political leader. I believe he's demonstrated poor judgment all too often with an inherent resistance to etiquette and standards.
Yeah, interesting. And just this last one from Steve, which is in total opposition to what Ian says. The whole House of Commons is covered in sleaze. But Steve says, as with any large group, it's always the few that smear the many. So any good work carried out gets overshadowed by these bad eggs, I think it might be.
Yeah.
As for Boris doing well with the rollout, that was nearly 2 years ago now. So Steve kind of making the point that it's easy to say they're all the same, but they're not.
I don't know, but we're not saying they're all the same.
No.
But it does get a bit much when it's one after the other, after the other, after the other.
It does feel like
That's 5 so far, just in the last couple of months.
Yeah. Should we talk about exercise?
I think so, because we need to change the mood, don't we? We all know the benefits of exercise, and it literally does do that, from changing your mood to developing stronger muscles, gives you better sleep.
Yeah.
But the psychological benefits of working out can often be overlooked.
Let's get some mood-boosting tips, it says here, that you can implement whatever your fitness level. We're joined by fitness and exercise guru Josh Salzman. Josh, morning to you.
Good morning.
Good morning, you guys, and it's a very early morning at that.
Well, I'm sure you always get up at about 6, don't you?
I get up at about 6, but I got up this morning at about 3 to prepare myself to come here.
Thank you.
Hair and makeup, we need that.
Yeah, absolutely. We all need that. Hours of it.
Yeah, hours of it.
Yeah.
But I think the thing about it is that I think to change your mood needs daily disciplines. And the reason I brought these little props here is because that's part of my daily discipline. And when I work with people, whether they're 8 years old or 88 years old, everyone suffers with anxiety, and everyone suffers with different levels of depression. As a matter of fact, let's go back to Winston Churchill. The only thing that got him out of his depression was the Nazis bombing. And he used to call depression the big black dog.
The big black dog, yeah.
And I think he realized that he didn't want the dog walking him, he wanted to walk the dog. So what do we do to control our black dogs or our depression or our anxieties? Is that you need a daily discipline. So I tend to work with people and I give them those disciplines, whether they're 8 or 88, to make sure that prevention is better than cure. So the reason I brought these in is, for instance, so I always believe that every day you should go through a checklist. And during that checklist, you're actually exercising your breathing. So it starts out with breath awareness. But these are the things that we can control in our lives because anxiety is about things that we can't control. So you can control how you think, you can control how you eat, and you can control how you mindfully exercise, not overtraining, because overtraining causes more cortisol and more anxiety. So start with this cricket ball. So the cricket ball, you place it on a bare foot on the floor and you roll on it and you find parts of your feet or your foot, in this case, that is sore. And when it's sore, it means that your posture is going to be slightly off. And by rolling it on your foot, you can find these places that actually will affect your knee alignment, and it'll get your body in better alignment. So you can roll on it.
You put that on the flat of your foot?
On the flat of your foot, and you roll on it. That's it.
No, you sit.
Well, you do it from sitting, you can do it from standing, but you lean against...
You're feeling around
the sole
of your foot like that.
And you're giving yourself reflexology.
Yeah.
And while you breathe and you keep your posture going, you can actually straighten your body out. The other thing is getting a grip. Now, when you talk about in life, let's get a grip, but your grip strength is really important. And the thing I find out with people is when they have aches or pains in their hands from texting too much, like you guys would know, from being on a computer, is that you get pain that's associated with a golfer's elbow, which is the inside, or a tennis elbow, which is the outside. And simply you loop this on your foot, and then you simply, like so, roll both your extensor and flexor muscles, and then you find the little places.
I've got trouble seeing what you're doing because of these darn things.
Okay. so basically, this is going to be on my foot, like this, and then the other part is going to be with my elbow down.
You're going to have to lift your leg up a lot higher.
I'm going to have to lift my leg up a lot higher. Okay, so
there
I
you
am
go.
like this. And
Nearly.
I'm a fitness guy. So anyways, but having said all that, getting a grip means that you're actually pumping blood through your hands. And your forearms are the most important part of your upper body. And if the forearms aren't ready for the day, then you'll find that life gets a bit tougher. Now, the other thing is the roller. Now, the roller, you can roll out muscles, or you can place this roller and put it underneath the small of your back. You're laying on the floor, and that brings your hips forward and your shoulders back. Because when your shoulders are forward and your hips are back, you get back problems and neck problems. And as you guys know here, when you're looking down, that forward head carriage is going to give you neck pain. Now, all these things are going to increase your anxiety if they're not working right. But the other part that needs to be addressed too is your nutrition. And you have to work with food as a medicine. And the problem with most people is they don't treat the symptoms. They treat the symptoms, not the causes. Yeah. And so if you have bad digestion, or if you have acidity or
reflux,
acid reflux, these are things that are going to make your mode really bad. So if your stomach is feeling good and your digestion is good, you're going to feel better. You're going to be in a better mood. So all these things...
I feel better when I eat less.
When you eat less.
Literally less volume of food always makes me feel better.
On that, where do you stand on fasting, having fasting
I do intermittent fasting myself. And the reason that is because I suffered because of treating a symptom, which was muscle pain in the 80s with a lot of ibuprofen. And what I got was ulcerative colitis, which you find with a lot of athletes. They have ulcerative colitis. And why? That's because of the use of non-steroidal anti-inflammatories. And if you treat food as a medicine and you intermittent fast, you're giving your gut a rest.
When you say you intermittent fast, how many, you take the odd day to fast, or do you do it twice a week?
No, I do. Every day I try to make between 60 and 20 hours where I don't eat.
I've heard this, yes.
And so what
try and create a long period during the day when you're not eating.
That's right. So what I do is I say I stop eating, like last night, because I had to get up early, I stopped eating at 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
And I'll have my first meal at, say, 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock today. And what it does, it gives my gut a rest. Because your emotions will mirror your gut. And if your gut's not right, your emotions aren't right. You know, when people have irritable bowel, a lot of it is maybe something that they have, allergies to food, but most of the time, it's the way they're thinking. And the way they're thinking the cortisol goes into the stomach and produces acidity. If you give your gut a break, you stop that acidity.
Before we have to conclude, just for time reasons, you talked about the daily discipline. When are you meant to do it? Because I'd find it very hard getting up at 2:30, 3 in the morning, or anyone on shift work. Your mind is totally concentrated on literally getting dressed and getting out of the door. So when should you do
Well,
the daily
I would
discipline?
say this. First of all, whatever time you do it, Anne, you should do it because you have to adjust to your schedule.
Yeah.
But most people, they need to get out of bed in the morning because it's always darkest before the dawn. It's always the anxiety increases. And so if you get out of bed and you start doing your daily disciplines, whether it's taking a walk or working on a rebounder or doing some yoga, you will increase your mood in a positive way. And these are the things you control. You can't control the world outside, but you can control how you think, you control how you eat, and you control how you mindfully exercise. And because you control that, you can respond better to the world around you.
Gonna give it a go. I know it's good advice. You know it's good advice. Will you give it a go? I wonder. We've got to take a break now. Thank you so much for that, because actually we could all do with that sort of talk this time in the morning, couldn't we? Can you come in tomorrow? No, don't worry.
I'll come in a little earlier to get here for you so we can do our routine.
Yeah, we could do it at 5 to 6 in the morning. We could do a routine in the studio.
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah, we'll think about that. Right, do join us in a couple of moments. We're going to take a quick break, but in a couple of moments we'll have a look through the newspapers with Mariana Hutter and Andre Walker.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Hello again. Time is 6:33 and we're going to go through the newspapers now. Should we have a look at the front pages first?
Yeah, let's do that. Telegraph leading on damaging allegations against Deputy Chief Tory Whip as it is revealed that the PM turned a blind eye to sex pest warnings, it says.
Yeah, the Mirror leads on the Prime Minister's failings, they say, to crack down on Pincher despite those warnings.
Times leads on the latest allegations that the Prince of Wales took money from foreign donors against the advice of his courtiers.
The Observer covers the official probe into the Prime Minister's plan to build 40 new hospitals by 2030.
The Express calls on the PM and Chancellor to reduce taxes ahead of the next general election.
And the Star leads on warnings to cut back on washing to save water. Says that given that we're all going to have a heat wave, we're all going to have to get hot and dirty.
Right.
That's something to look forward to, isn't it?
Yeah, indeed. 6:34. Should we go through what's inside the...
Yes, indeed. Marianne and Andre are with us. You're looking forward to a summer of being hot and dirty.
Why not?
Yeah, absolutely. Go with it. Yeah. So let's have a look at the latest scandal on the front page of the Mail on Sunday, Mary.
Yes. So this is the fact that I'm sorry, I've got a terrible cough. No.
Oh, do you need some?
All of a sudden. So this is the fact that Boris Johnson apparently knew entirely about the allegations about and the reputation of this MP, Chris Pincher, 2 years ago. And during the meeting, when they decided that he was going to get this job in senior government, managing the behaviour of other MPs, Boris Johnson apparently said, he's handsy. That's a problem. Pincher by name, Pincher by nature.
Oh, no.
And then, nonetheless, they agreed to give him the job. Lots of the other members of that same department said that is not an acceptable appointment, threatened to resign. And all this is obviously now coming out because Downing Street had previously said that Boris Johnson wasn't aware of any allegations, and therefore Boris Johnson at least is blameless in this situation. In some of the other papers, there's more details about the allegations and then how it was dealt with by other members of the Tory party within the bar in the immediate aftermath. Someone apparently saying to the guy who'd just been assaulted, "Oh, but aren't you gay?" And he was like, what has that got to do with it?
Well, that's why I was asking a bit earlier. Would this all have been dealt with much faster and, you know, no questions really about the way to deal with it if he had groped a woman, allegedly groped a woman? The fact that he allegedly groped a man, maybe not taken as seriously because somehow, you know, men are up for it. Oh, so what's wrong with that? And I don't know. Do you think?
It sort of reveals a very problematic approach that we as a society...
You said that remark. Anyway, if you thought you were gay, that's all right, too.
Yeah, exactly. That's what you people do, is the sort of implication, and that is appalling in its own right.
But isn't that an element of all these sexual harassment cases? It's young men that really get the brunt of it. Now, I'm not saying that women in the House of Commons get treated well, but young men are completely left on their own. Now, look, you know, when I worked at the House of Commons, and I'll tell you the nickname of Chris Pincher. Now, this is based on his...
Are you allowed to say that on air?
No, you'll be... It's all right. It's his constituency followed by his name. He was known as the Tamworth Pincher. Now, I mean, in reality, now, that is his constituency and his name, but what does that tell you about what people thought about his behaviour, that was his nickname? Now, look, he's not a bad guy, but at the end of the day, if you're going to get very, very drunk and behave inappropriately, then you can't be in that position of authority.
But we've gone past haven't we gone past anyway questioning his character? Because obviously these are still allegations. The only thing he has admitted to is getting ridiculously drunk. But I'm just saying, it's almost beyond now him and his character, because they knew about it. It's whether the decisions that then consequently promoting him and everything else, it's whether that is the bigger problem now.
Yeah, the story is as much about Boris Johnson's judgment as it is about what he did.
Exactly,
it seems.
and the culture within Westminster. You know, these elected members of our democracy who represent us appear to live by these rules that just do not apply or should not apply to the rest of us. We used to have some sense of the role, the responsibility, the privilege of serving your community, that there were a certain very basic degree of standards that were expected of someone holding a public office. And the thing that really concerns me is that there's this shifting baseline where over the past few months, past couple of years perhaps, the things that we expect and that kind of just roll our eyes and you go, oh, another one, has meant that the basic standard that we expect from someone in public office is just appalling.
Well,
that we kind of go, oh, yeah, sexual assault, you know, public corruption, giving a massive £1 million contracts to your mates,
we're becoming desensitised to it in a way. Just very quickly, Andre, because we want to move on.
Yeah, what I was going to say is, what you've just said is predicated on the assumption that there is more bad behaviour. What it could also be is more bad behaviour being exposed. So actually, this process might be a positive thing. But I'll tell you something. In reality, people getting absolutely shedded in the office, drinking, 10, 15 pints a day. I think the bars need to close in reality. I just don't think it's appropriate.
I've not heard that phrase said yet, so that's interesting. What's this on the front of the Telegraph? The government's top lawyer blaming Remainer civil servants.
Oh, this is the sort of moan we actually want to be making, isn't it, about our political leaders? Yeah, Suella Braverman is complaining that a lot of civil servants just absolutely hate Brexit and are not willing to take the advantages of Brexit. They've given a couple of examples. There's things like VAT is still in line with Europe when actually we don't have to be in line with Europe. I think for me, as an avowed Brexiteer, I've always felt that whether you like Brexit or not, a lot of people within the civil service see it as a problem that needs to be managed rather than an opportunity to be grasped.
But is it the civil service's problem if VAT, is that not the Chancellor? The Chancellor could cut VAT.
Well,
What's got to do with civil service?
I hear you, brother. I'm a Conservative. I don't see any Conservative governments in this country.
Yeah, so it seems an odd thing for the Attorney General to be blaming the civil service when it's just, the Chancellor could just very easily cut VAT.
I think the other problem is, I think you make a fair point. I think actually, in many respects, it's the parliamentarians that are to blame. The number of times that I heard, what we need to do is exceed the standards of Europe. No, we need to cut all this red tape out. So actually, if you take Brexit and make rules more onerous, then it will be hugely damaging.
Let's move on to lifting our eyebrows at the latest royal news, Marianne.
Oh, yeah. You thought that at least someone was... Well, no, they were never squeaky clean, were they? Honourable, there's the word. So this is the news that the Charities Commission is looking into some, again, slightly murky behaviour, shall we say. I think I was on last week talking about murky shenanigans with the royals and their charities and accepting money from whoever.
Because last week this story was about Prince Charles accepting a suitcase full of money from
a Fortnum & Mason carrier bag.
A Qatari sheikh.
So this one is that Prince Charles presented a person called Lord Brownlow with an award this guy had already spent £1.7 million bailing out the Prince of Wales a sort of property development project to build a new eco-village that never really got built, that never really had the backing of the local community. Prince Charles still owns property nearby, but kind of shuns the village. And this guy, Lord Brownlow, sort of bought up lots of the assets.
Now, isn't Lord Brownlow the man who bought the wallpaper for Boris's
Yes, he bought the wallpaper.
flat?
Apparently, he was on the list of people who might be buying Boris Johnson's kid £150,000.
Oh, that's right. He sounds like a man to seriously get to know, because he obviously gives money away.
Well, exactly, that's it. I mean, and he's worth £271 million.
Right.
So this is still pocket change.
I just wonder whether people just sit there going, well, who's going to pay for that? Get Brownlow. He'll pay for anything.
But he's probably on speed dial somewhere, isn't he?
Exactly. But the thing is, he's also a trustee of the charity, and the question is, were these interests declared? And it, again, raises the question of all these people in influential, powerful, decision-making positions who appear to have absolutely terrible judgment of what looks right and what is right.
Is there, look, I'm going to advance a controversial view here, but is there an argument for saying, look, a CBE is a lump of tin. If somebody's willing to give £2 million to charity, let's just send them the lump of tin.
Well, I would agree with that, as long as it is to charity, to a proper charity, and not just to somebody's big little project. I don't know how much this eco-village, and this clearly needs investigation, the eco-village is a charity, apparently. But who's it a charity for? Who's it actually helping?
Well, that's it.
I mean, if it was £1.7 million that had been donated to cancer research, you would actually say, all right, give the man an OBE, what do we care? But it just depends on the justification.
I think there's another element to this story. Now, I might get the figures wrong here, but I remember Prince Charles buying Dumfries House, and it was like 10, 20 million pounds that he spent on it, and he just raised all the money by having fundraising dinners and palm pressing. And I have to say to you, instinctively, I'm quite keen on rigging the system so that millions of pounds gets brought in. But as you say, Anne, what you can't do is, I've decided to build this village, let's pocket all the money. But to be fair, I don't think you see much evidence of Prince Charles doing any of this sort of thing for anything other than charitable causes.
Yes, exactly.
Indeed. GBviews at gbnews.uk if you want to feedback to us on that one. Just finally, Andre, the age of cheap travel, air travel, is over.
Yeah, I'm slightly bemused by Michael O'Leary from Ryanair complaining that airfare's too cheap. I thought that was his stick. But anyway, I think they gave the example in the paper that if you were to go from, I think it's Liverpool Street to Stansted, return, it would be £40 on the train. If you were then to fly to Milan, it'd be £20 return. I mean, look, I've got to be honest with you. I think Ryanair potentially have taken it too far. There was that terrible incident, wasn't there, of 120 people being stranded because Ryanair's weren't willing to wait when people were in the security queue. I think when you're getting to £10 one way, £20, I think it might be worth just spending a bit more to get more pay for the pilots. I mean, £30,000 a year to be a pilot when it costs £150,000 to train, and a lot of the staff don't get
and better pay for the baggage handlers and everybody else who matters when you're going abroad and you need a stress-free journey. Meanwhile, while he says that, the front page of the Sunday Times says that EasyJet, the boss of EasyJet, is taking all his corporate, his senior managers on a corporate jamboree to Mallorca. And they're going, obviously, on a private jet.
The words they use.
I know, jamboree.
Yeah,
but
it's a weekend away.
It's a weekend away for all his top people. But they are going to stay 2 nights at the 5-star Iberostar Resort Hotel in Palma. It's on the beach. It boasts a rooftop infinity pool and a sunset champagne bar. Quite fancy going. But I would have to queue. The rest of us would have to queue and maybe even sleep on the floor at Heathrow Airport to actually do the journey. These guys are going to presumably walk straight past the queues onto a private jet and just go away. And it's not a good look, is it?
Well, it's a bit weird if you own an airline not using it. I mean, even if you, I don't know, even if you, put different seats in, it was at least liveried as your own airline. And just
but like I said, they're going to go through a VIP section of the airport, aren't
they? They're not going to go through the same experience as their passengers.
What is the point in us pretending we wouldn't go if we got invited?
Oh, no, I would, definitely.
I think, it's not the fact. I think it's more the point that the way they're going to get there is not going to be the way that any of us are going to get to where we want to go.
All right, and so we talk about the baggage handlers and the pilots not being particularly well paid at all, which may be what's causing a problem now recruiting. But for instance, the top exec of EasyJet, the chief exec, Johan Lundgren, has a home on the island. They're going to. He's paid a basic salary of 740 grand and a bonus of 1.5 million.
Well, you're paying me more than that to be here, so...
Yes.
Yes,
I won't lie about it. Yeah.
He's expecting his holiday tickets in the envelope afterwards as well.
Yeah.
If you haven't got his infinity pool sorted, he'll toss out the crowd.
So I still want to hear from anyone at home who's rethinking, as I am having to do, and it's breaking my heart because I do love my holidays. I've got to an age where I didn't used to, but I've got to an age now where I really want a holiday to look forward to. But has it made you think twice, or maybe just think I'm going to do a staycation this year?
Yeah, don't get me started on baggage.
No, I mean, he has yet to be reunited with his suitcase.
The bag, I heard the bag texted me last night. It's still in Munich. It's been there a week.
Having
a good time, apparently. So one day I'll see it.
So you packed your case, got there, and never, ever saw your suitcase?
The bag never left Heathrow. And then the day after I got back from Munich, I then got told it's flying out to Munich.
Oh, that's good.
So we crossed
each other. You past.
Yeah, exactly. And then, of course, you can't call the airline because they don't have a phone line.
Because they don't have any human beings.
They tell you to go online and talk to an Autobot and then email an automated system. And so I haven't actually spoken to anyone about the bag unless I physically go to Heathrow Airport and
it becomes
or to Munich.
Quite often it becomes circular, doesn't it? When the cops don't understand you, they just return you to the beginning, and you're going, "Please, can I talk to a person?"
That's the worst thing about it. That's the worst thing about it. There's no one to call. There's no one to speak
the worst thing, it'll get worse. I can imagine it'll start sending you postcards. Love from wherever.
Right.
Photographs.
Exactly. Having a great time.
Yeah.
How are you doing with your lack of clothes?
Yes, you'll just have to go out and buy a new suit.
Indeed, I have already.
This is market economics for you.
Yes, it's wonderful.
Don't open that can of worms.
Well, this is what
you might have a point,
Andre, and now you're reaping the seeds.
Oh, I love it. 10 quid flights. Who cares about your bag? Buy some new underwear when you get there.
Well, it would
with
be
the money you save, spend it on the clothes.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's the new
Don't travel with your clothes. Buy them when you're there. It's good for the local economy.
Right, enough of that. 6:48. Should we bring everyone up to date with
what the latest headlines are? The Prime Minister and the Chancellor have outlined what they're calling the single biggest tax cut in a decade. Writing a joint article in The Sun on Sunday, they say Wednesday's rise in the national insurance threshold from just under 10,000 to just over 12.5 will save 30 million British workers up to £330 a year.
Elsewhere this morning, the government spending watchdog is planning to investigate the PM's 2019 election pledge to build 40 new hospitals by the end of the decade. It's after the Shadow Health Secretary Wes Streeting warned the plans are a waste of taxpayers' money, with many hospitals having alterations or refurbishments instead of being new.
The government wants security checks on new airport workers to be treated as priority to prevent travel delays this summer. The Department of Transport claim counter-terrorist checks are being processed in record times now, as shortages of baggage and security staff are fueling the hold-ups.
Cyberbullying may be playing a key role in keeping mortality rates high amongst people with asthma. A study from Nottingham University Business School says online abuse fuels a vicious cycle, meaning those with the condition trivialise it and can be less likely to take their medication.
So, yeah, we've got lots of reaction from you. Thanks very much indeed. Jim says, morning, Anne. Yes, I've had enough of Boris and his corrupt government 2 years ago. As someone who was overjoyed by the huge electoral success of Boris in 2019, I got fed up when I found there's nothing conservative or honourable about him. How a so-called freedom-loving libertarian Prime Minister can implement such draconian, authoritarian lockdown policies akin to China and North Korea is beyond me.
Interesting. Morning, Dave in Littlehampton, who says parading around at Gay Pride is simply virtue signalling and means little for my part. Starmer and Rayner look ridiculous.
This was the picture. 50 years of Pride was celebrated yesterday and again today, I think, with lots of marches and rallies all over the country. And there was a big one in London, and Keir Starmer and Angela Rayner went out on the march. And I think Angela Rayner looks terrific because she's throwing herself right into it. She's wearing a rainbow flag and trainers that everybody seems to be talking about. They're called popping candy sneakers. And she looks as though she sort of belongs. But Keir doesn't, does he? He just looks a little bit awkward, and I think he looks like Dad. You know?
Yeah, he does look awkward, but he's trying his best to get involved.
Oh, God, there's Dad out in the march.
It's his constituency.
Is it?
Yeah.
So it's, no, I'm not saying it's not important he went along. I just think it's so funny.
No, actually, I want to weigh in as well. I mean, that's clearly a T-shirt somebody else designed and forced him to wear. It's not his fault, is it?
No, we make Camden proud.
And he's getting involved.
I reckon he looked at a whole rail of possible things he could wear for Pride, and he went, "I'll have that nice, tasteful black T-shirt."
Yes, yeah.
I think he's all right. As a fellow dad, I'm standing in his corner.
It's what you think and say that counts, not
Oh,
what you wear.
no, I quite agree with you. I quite agree. It's just a picture that tickled my fancy.
Yeah,
as they say.
Interesting. gbviews@gbnews.uk if you want to feed back to us on that.
I wonder what you think if there was a by-election, how that would go. Do you think, Marianne?
I really
Chris
hope,
Pincher's seat up for grabs.
I really hope that Boris Johnson would get another stinging slap across the face that, you know, the local people would just go, this is not OK.
It's always been a pretty safe Tory seat, but now we're beginning to realise that almost anything can happen.
Yeah, it's a funny one, though, isn't it? Because it's not the profile of those two previous by-elections that we had. It's a fairly safe kind of Brexit voting seat. So they should presumably be instinctively Boris supporters. But I think that gentleman that you just read out then, you know, a huge number of people who were enthusiastic in 2019 are now absolutely furious. And so that could be a significant problem.
Yeah.
People in the Conservative Party, you know, like people who vote Tory or are kind of naturally Conservative, you know, right of centre, do have principles, do have a sense of honour, do have a sense of right and wrong. And I think there's a certain point where, you know, even if it's a blue Tory government, they're going, this is taking the mickey. These are not the principles which I expect you to stand by. This
I
is
think
not
what I find, and it'll be sort of, they'll thunder down on the cabinet table, won't they, today's papers, and somebody will look at them, and papers that you would normally think would always try and find a positive Tory spin are actually sort of reporting otherwise now.
The Mail on Sunday kind of go for it.
The Mail on Sunday are going for them.
Yeah, but you're in a position where one of your MPs had to resign because he was watching pornography in the chamber. I mean, it's not a great standard, is it?
No.
I mean, there's just some base. I mean, I would have thought it goes without saying, don't watch porn in the House of Commons chamber.
Yes. But how much is this the failings of individuals, and how much is it sort of corporate responsibility by the Prime Minister?
I think it's both. I think it's a culture. It's a ecosystem that promotes people who are willing to do whatever it takes to get that promotion, to toe the party line, to do what the whips say, and it's cronyism front and centre. If you're willing to go out and defend Boris Johnson for giving or wanting to give Carrie Johnson, his then girlfriend, in the compromising situation, a $100,000 job, taxpayer's job, if you're willing to kind of go out and defend that kind of behaviour, then you are, selling yourself short.
And we should stress that is the allegation.
But there's another major problem. I recently got dragooned into being on the executive of Windsor Conservative Association. Now, when our Member of Parliament resigns, whoever me and 19 other people decide is going to be the candidate is going to win that election. And then that person will be reselected for as long as they want.
How much pressure in that situation does the local party come under to actually give it to somebody they want in Parliament?
Yeah, what they do is, generally, the party themselves will give a list. So effectively, it's kind of, you can have any of these 20 people. But then effectively what happens is some anonymous official in Conservative or Labour Party HQ is going to sift that down to the 20 people. And then, I think legitimately, if you were a voter in Windsor, you would say, well, who is Andre Walker? What gives him the right to effectively decide who my Member of Parliament's going to be?
Quite powerful position, isn't it?
It's a similar story in the Labour Party.
Of course, yes.
There as well, yeah.
OK, well, we really are now running out of time, so thank you very much indeed for coming in. We'll see you again in about an hour. Do stay with us. We've got lots more to talk about, as you can see, and other things as well, like sport and stuff like that, so it's all happening here. But we'll be back with you in just a couple of moments after the weather. Right, looking ahead to today's weather, the UK is looking like another day of sunshine and showers, though some places will stay dry, so let's take a look at the detail. There'll be increasing amounts of sunshine across south-west England by lunchtime, with just a few lingering showers. Temperatures rising to 17 by midday. Light winds for all.
Sunny spells and scattered showers at lunchtime across southeast England and the London area. Still the odd heavy shower possible. Temperatures of 19 degrees Celsius.
To Wales now. Wales is going to see a mixture of sunshine and showers. Some could still be on the heavy side. Light winds and temperatures reaching 18 degrees.
Scattered showers for the Midlands, some possibly heavy in places. However, there will be plenty of sunny spells in between the showers, helping to lift temperatures to around 18 degrees Celsius, light winds as well.
North East England will see a mix of sunny spells and scattered heavy showers this lunchtime. Some sunshine developing at times too, temperatures slowly lifting to around 17.
It is a mixed picture for Scotland at midday. A mix of sunshine and showers, those heaviest and most frequent across the south of the country.
Scattered showers continuing for Northern Ireland, rather cloudy skies, but there will be some sunshine which will help lift temperatures to about 16. Little breezy along the north coast too.
Showers will clear eastwards through the rest of the day, allowing dry weather to move on. And that's how the weather is shaping up for the rest of Sunday.
Start off your GB News Sunday with Stephen and Anne at breakfast from 6 a.m. At 10, join the political correction. From 12 till 6, it's Alistair, Darren and Nana. At 7, join Free Speech Nation for a laugh that won't be cancelled. At 9, it's Mark Dolan Tonight, followed by Headliners. That's Sunday on GB News.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Chris Pincher faces 6 new claims of inappropriate behaviour days after his suspension as a Tory MP.
Yes, good morning. It's 7 o'clock on Sunday, the 3rd of July. This is Breakfast on GB News with Anne and Paul.
Yeah, very good morning to you. We are live across the whole of the UK on both your TV and your radio. Wherever you are, you can take us with you. Here's what you're waking up to this Sunday morning.
Yeah, well, the former Conservative Deputy Chief Whip, Chris Pincher, has said he is seeking professional medical support amid new allegations of inappropriate behaviour, stretching back more than a decade. It comes after he was suspended as a Tory following accusations he groped 2 men whilst very drunk at a club in London.
2 more Britons have been captured while assisting local armed forces in Ukraine. Andrew Hill and Dylan Healy are now facing the possibility of a Russian death sentence for what Moscow describes as mercenary activities in the conflict.
And it's finally time for the British Grand Prix. Ferrari's Carlos Sainz? Thank you. Snatched pole position in a soaking qualifying session yesterday, whilst Brits Lewis Hamilton and Lando Norris will start 5th and 6th in today's blockbuster race.
Blockbuster race, eh?
Do you know, when it said there that they faced a soaking, I thought, is that a sort of Formula One term?
Oh, I see, like a
I didn't realise it was actually rain.
Yeah.
A thrashing, like in football you face a thrashing.
Yeah.
Maybe in Formula One you face a soaking, I didn't know.
Yeah.
I've got a lot to learn. I'm going to learn it this morning.
Lewis Hamilton soaked his competitors.
Yes, yeah. See, because they always, don't they? They always have the champagne and they soak everybody with it.
I see what you've done there.
Yeah.
That's very good. Very good. As ever, you can join in conversations like that by emailing gbviews@gbnews.uk, or why not go all modern on us and tweet us at GBNews.
Or even moderner, you could subscribe to the GB News channel on YouTube to get all the latest on the big stories. Everyone's talking about it. You just go to GB News on YouTube and you press like and subscribe, and it costs you nothing. It just it sort of makes you part of the club,
it.
I guess.
Yeah, that's it. Two minutes past 7 then. Our top story, Chris Pincher facing more allegations of misconduct and inappropriate behaviour today following his suspension as a Tory MP.
It comes after the MP for Tamworth says he is seeking professional medical support following accusations of groping 2 men whilst intoxicated at the Carlton Club in London. He quit as Tory Deputy Chief Whip on Thursday, but is now subject to an investigation which he says he's going to fully cooperate with.
Yeah, let's get the latest from political commentator Lesis Bromovsky. Lesis, he's going to cooperate with the investigation, but he's not going.
No, he's not going at all. I mean, this is another week and another Tory scandal has come to light. He has been suspended from the whip, so he's now an independent party in his seat in Tamworth. And this morning we've heard that there have been 6 new allegations come to light. This is on top of starting back in 2017 when the Mail reported the first of these allegations against him. which was from Alex Story, a former Olympian and former Tory candidate, said that he had got a bit inappropriate with him in his flat, which one can presume was after a few drinks. Very similar to the situation as you were just talking about in the Carlton Club last Wednesday, where he got so drunk that he couldn't talk, he could barely walk, he had to be put in a taxi to go home. And these are just allegations at the moment, but...
Which he denies.
Which he denies, yes. However...
He denies the inappropriate behaviour, but he clearly admits the drunkenness because he did so in his first letter of resignation. And then last night saying he's taking professional medical attention or whatever, treatment, suggests that he knows he's got a real problem.
Yeah, definitely.
Is there? I mean, the more and more you hear is that there is a real alcohol problem in Westminster.
Well, completely. It comes down to this sort of culture at the moment in Westminster. It started with sort of Partygate, and now we're seeing this, like, I'm all for having a drink after work, a bit of a de-stress, relax. But this was a Wednesday night going into a Thursday morning where he was so intoxicated. I mean, the sort of hangover the next day. These are the men and women that we're expecting to lead our country at a time when we're in a serious sort of crisis.
And frankly, it was at the Carlton Club, which we know is the sort of Tory club. It used to be a gentleman's club only till about 2 years ago or something.
Yeah.
And but it was a big reception for Friends of Cyprus or something. So it was diplomatic, if nothing else. It was work-related, really. And for anyone to get that intoxicated at a work-related event, even if it is in the evening at a gentleman's club, it does seem to be not very professional.
No, not very professional at all. And what's doubling down on this is that Boris has now got very much involved because it turns out that Chris Pincher actually had a government minder that went along with him to ensure that he didn't get too drunk at these events. So this is something which was clearly very much known within the party.
How would that work practically? You've got a minder with you watching what you drink.
Yeah,
I mean,
but you're the deputy chief whip.
How many have you had?
You are
No more for you.
of these behaviour standards, and yet
Isn't it?
you've got someone following you around.
If you watch political dramas a lot, you always understand that the chief whip, and certainly the deputy chief whip, part of their job is knowing what you're like, what their members are like, and also being able, knowing your secrets.
Yeah.
So that, if necessary, you could
use against them, twist your arm to...
But here, we've got the Deputy Chief Whip himself having a minder so that he doesn't behave inappropriately.
Yeah, exactly. And his inappropriate behaviour was very much known within government, within his party itself. When he was appointed back in February, Steve Barclay, the MP, came forward and opposed his appointing. In fact, one of the senior whips, Craig Whitaker, actually ended up resigning. This goes all the way to the grassroots level. Young Conservatives within the party called him Uncle Monty as a sort of reference to a sort of predatory character in With Neil and I, the cult film. So it's very much known within the party.
Well, then we heard during the paper review that he was known. His name is Pincher. He's the MP for Tamworth. He was known as the Tamworth Pincher.
I mean, it's so inappropriate.
It's obviously inappropriate. And from his personal point of view, you could say the man needs help, he's getting help, that's good. But should he be an MP? Should he be appointed to that job? When others... I suppose I'm saying, shouldn't the boss have known better than to promote him, given that he was clearly what Anna Soubry called him, a troubled soul?
Definitely. There's no doubt in my mind that he should not have been appointed to this position, considering his previous record and the expectations that came with this position. I think it's important here to think that Boris has massively misstepped once again, and we're finding ourselves at yet another scandal once again. And it really speaks to... And I don't think this is just a Tory problem, actually. I would say that there's definitely a problem across the whole of government. We've had other Labour MPs like Claudia Webb who have been forward for harassment and threatening, an acid attack. Liam Byrne, who was found guilty of bullying his staff. I mean, even Wes Streeting was doing death threats on Twitter. There's clearly an issue within government about the people being elected, and there needs to be some serious grassroots level changes.
Is it just plain arrogance, generally? That some MPs, certainly not all, I've met some really decent people, but that once you get into Westminster, you think you've made it, you think you've got it all.
I mean, maybe I'm not 100% sure on that, but there's got to be something going on. There's got to be something in the Kool-Aid, as people would say, you know. Something's going wrong.
Well, maybe they should change to Kool-Aid.
Yeah, get off the alcohol.
Yeah, turn off the alcohol, just go for coffee bars and juice bars.
I mean, that seems like a smart decision at this point. Save off yet another scandal next week.
Yeah, and on that note, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you, Lesis. Appreciate your time this morning. Les Bromovsky there, a political commentator, we should say, of course. All the allegations of sexual misconduct.
They are
strenuously
allegations.
denied by Christian.
Yes, absolutely. So it's very nearly 7:09. Let's bring you up to date with the headlines this morning. And the Prime Minister and the Chancellor have outlined what they're calling the single biggest tax cut in a decade. Would you call it that? Because they're writing a joint article in The Sun on Sunday and they're saying that Wednesday's rise in the national insurance threshold from just under 10,000 to just over 12,500 will save 30 million British workers up to £330 a year.
Yeah, interesting to hear what you guys think about that. GB Views at gbnews.uk. Meanwhile, elsewhere this morning, the government spending watchdog is planning to investigate the PM's 2019 election pledge to build 40 new hospitals by the end of the decade. It's after the Shadow Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, warned the plans are a waste of taxpayers' money, with many hospitals having alterations or refurbishments instead of being new.
The government wants security checks on new airport workers to be treated as a priority. One would have hoped it might already be, to prevent travel delays this summer. The Department of Transport claim counter-terrorist checks are being processed now in record times, as shortages of baggage and security staff just make the hold-ups worse. So there's a lot for you to get stuck into with us this morning. As you said, GB Views at gbnews.uk. Do you think that the government is actually dressing up these 20 new hospitals as maybe they're not actually new, they're just sort of extensions or wings or things like that? Is that really right to call them 20 new hospitals? And what about this feature that's in The Sun on Sunday, written by Rishi Sunak and Boris Johnson?
About tax cuts.
Yes.
We're very interested in
saying this putting the national insurance cap up to 12.5 grand is actually a tax cut and is going to benefit, I'll find it here, in The Sun on Sunday, there. We're about to put some more of your pay back in your pocket. Great big double-page spread in The Sun on Sunday, written by Boris and Rishi, who are basically saying, yes, this it's going to amount to £330 each one of us will save.
Yes.
Because of the national insurance hike being put up.
Yeah. So they're effectively saying that, look, we really are tax cutters and we're going to give you more money back in your pocket. But are they going to do it? That's the thing, because we often hear about tax cuts from the Chancellor and the Prime Minister, and they're talking about it, thinking about it, and there have been some in the past, and Boris Johnson often talks about the 5p cut in fuel tax, but have they done enough, and is it time to do more, and why don't they do it sooner?
And is it enough to convince you? Yeah, absolutely. Keep your views coming in.
Indeed.
Now to Ukraine, and 2 British nationals have been charged with mercenary activities in eastern Ukraine. The pair may now face the death penalty after reportedly being captured by Kremlin forces in April.
The Foreign Office has condemned the exploitation of prisoners of war and raised the issue with Russia. Joining us now to discuss this is former British officer Tim Cross. Morning to you, Tim. Thanks for joining us at 7:11 on a Sunday morning. First of all, how do you feel about these, or rather 2 more Britons being captured?
Yeah, I mean, I have to say this word mercenaries is not one that we've heard much in the last few years. It reminds me, I don't know whether you remember, there's a book called The Dogs of War by Frederick Forsyth. And this mercenary business is rather like the dark web in today's terms. So it's quite unusual, but it is important. And these guys are obviously, under real pressure here, and their families will be really worried. When we look at military operations, we the British talk about the whole force. So we talk about regular soldiers who've signed up and their career as professional soldiers, serving the state, serving abroad, wherever. We then have reserves who are training in day-to-day work, but have a normal job, and then for a particular operation might be deployed to support the regular forces. Then we have contractors who go on operations sometimes, particularly the Navy take people with them, and other contractors who come and do various jobs on these operations. And within that, we then have private security companies and private military companies. And the Russians have an organization called the Wagner Group, which support them. And the sort of differentiation, the balance between private military company and a mercenary is a bit murky, really, is the truth. But essentially, mercenaries will be people who are getting paid by some sort of organisation to do the fighting, and that used to happen a lot in Africa, for example.
Well, yeah, and it's not the first time that Russia has used this word, particularly in some way trying to point a finger of blame at anyone fighting against them, but particularly British mercenaries. I mean, does it make their predicament very dangerous? Does it? I mean, would Russia see them as a bona fide target for maybe even a death penalty?
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about that. I think they're using this as, in inverted commas, for propaganda purposes, if you like. I'm sure these guys will be on trial, and sadly, I suspect they'll be found guilty and probably given a death sentence. That's what happened to the two British guys earlier this year. Now, whether that would actually be carried out or not is something completely different. I don't know the circumstances that obviously it's going to unfurl in the weeks ahead, but it's possible that they will then use them as bargaining chips in negotiations, prisoner exchanges, or whatever. But sadly, and particularly for the families, this is not going to be resolved quickly. It'll drag on for weeks, if not months, I think. Indeed, potentially even years.
And every time the British government talk to the Russians about it, they're legitimising Russia's claim to that part of Ukraine.
Yeah, and it doesn't. You know, we have a lot of what I call megaphone diplomacy going on in this campaign, and I don't want to point fingers at particular individuals, but talking about pushing Russia out of the whole of Ukraine, including Crimea, and so on. The Russians, you know, we need to understand how the Russians perceive this. It's not that we agree with them, but one of the old maxims from Sun Tzu 2,500 years ago was, if you understand yourself and you understand your enemy, then you need not fear the outcome of 1,000 battles. And we need to understand Putin, and we need to understand their mentality and their psychology. And sadly, by simply, as I say, using megaphone diplomacy, when you then come to issues like this, where you want quiet diplomacy and you want to be able to talk, under the radar and have sensible negotiations, it becomes much more difficult. And the Russians will undoubtedly use this.
That's really interesting, Tim. So you're saying that maybe the British government could try and put themselves in Putin's shoes more?
I think so. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, every British commander that I've worked with, and indeed, if you use somebody like, well, in World War II, a lot of senior British commanders would have photographs of the senior enemy commander and would understand who they were, what their background was, how they saw the world, what their career looked like. So Montgomery was well known as a very, very determined. We used to call it teeing up the battlefield. He would not get involved in a battle until he had sufficient combat power in his own mind to defeat the enemy. Rommel was completely different. Rommel was much more maneuver warfare and would prepare to take risks and would do all sorts of things that would never have entered Monty's mind. So understanding the context of that and then enables you to put together your own plan. And that's true today as it was back then.
But we do understand a bit about Putin, don't we? And I'm sure that our intelligence service understand more, that he wants to rebuild or certainly reclaim those territories he considers should still be part of the old Soviet empire. And interestingly, when you also you watch reports coming out of the Donbass region, for instance, there are local people there who feel a greater affinity to Russia than to Ukraine and actually blames Vladimir Zelensky for causing this war.
Oh, that's true. And there are commentators around, even here in the UK, who would argue that, we're partly to blame for this because we've allowed NATO to expand, to push hard against the Russian borders and so on. So, yes, in that context, but using that as an example, Russia has a historical sense of wanting to be a serious player in world events. And there's no doubt in my mind at all that Putin thinks that Kiev is the spiritual home of Russian orthodoxy. And we could go into his own faith, in inverted commas, and his support from his Archbishop Kirill, who undoubtedly is supporting him on this, and probably has convinced each other that this is a just war, a just campaign. Crimea is historically Russian, they would argue. These eastern provinces, and indeed elsewhere, are lots of Russian speakers, and they belong to Russia. It's rather like Nazi Germany in the late 1930s, arguing about how the Germans in Austria were part of Germany and so forth. So, this is not unusual in one sense, but Putin genuinely believes this stuff. There's no good at saying it's not right, it's not fair or whatever. He genuinely believes it. And therefore, in the context of how we take him on, how we support Ukraine, the messages we send, they have to be seen in that context as we put together our strategic intent of how we tackle this campaign.
Is it inevitable then that those contested regions will, in the end, have to be given up to Russia?
Well, I don't think it's inevitable, and nothing is certain, but I think it's probable, certainly possible. The Russian speakers that you talk about there, I think, from what I'm hearing, are pretty unhappy with the way that Russia's, undertaken this campaign. I think initially Putin and his generals and the people who put this campaign together had a relatively softly approach. They thought that by surrounding Kiev, by putting the Donbass under pressure and doing it relatively quietly and gently, I mean, all these things are relative, as I say, but nonetheless, that everybody would say, okay, fine, lots of Russian speakers, they need to be part of Russia. That didn't work out for them. So they're now undertaking this, really attritional-based campaign, and they are prepared and are using, a lot of combat power. They're using 20,000 artillery shells a day in this campaign in the eastern Donbass. So, they are, in my mind, they will take these two eastern provinces. And the question then is, what do they do then? Now, they have not retracted from the fact that they have said they want the whole of Ukraine. Yeah. So it's possible that they will carry on. It's possible that they will try and secure Odessa. But it's also possible, and maybe probable, that having secured those eastern provinces, they will then say, okay, let's go to a negotiating table. And the problem for the Ukrainians is, do we acknowledge and accept that they keep those provinces in the fear that in 4 or 5 years' time, the Russians will have another go to secure some other province? Yeah. So I think the Ukrainians are going to be very reluctant to give these provinces up. And they're being supported in that by Western NATO powers who are giving them equipment to defend at the moment, but are now talking about giving them offensive capabilities in order to retake those provinces, which is a different ballgame.
If that scenario plays out, doesn't it leave egg on the face of NATO as well? And we'll have to ask ourselves, what position will we be in a few years' time too? We've supported a war that, frankly, has been lost.
Well, we don't know how it's going to turn out. And my view is that NATO has done pretty well. I mean, it's not completely unified. There are Germany and France and Italy take a different perspective of some of these issues for all sorts of reasons, particularly energy related, of course. But overall, NATO has come together extremely well. And the fact that Finland and Sweden have now joined and Turkey's agreed to that, is an important step forward. So we cannot fight, we cannot use our own combat power in Ukraine. Ukraine is not part of NATO, and I think it's absolutely right that we have not tried to, set up air power or air corridors or whatever in Ukraine. But yeah, it's possible that Ukraine will come out of this badly, and that all the support we've given them has not been sufficient to enable them to win through. But when people talk about winning, these words are important. In the old Cold War days, we talked about détente, defend, deter, destroy. These words are important in terms of how you put together your military campaign. And when people talk about winning, what do they mean by that? What do they mean by defeating Russia as opposed to destroying Russia or pushing them out of the whole of Ukraine?
Tim, we'll have to leave it there.
There's a long way to go in this campaign.
We'll have to leave it there.
It's going to go on for months, I think.
We're really sorry, Tim. It's been fascinating talking to you, but we're going to have to leave it there.
Thank you so much.
Really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Look forward to the next time we talk about it too.
Tim
Yes,
Cross,
thank you.
Indeed. So much to talk about when it comes to the end of that.
He's amazing, isn't he? It's lovely talking to him because he
really
knows what he's talking about. But we'll also be talking sport because there's a lot of it around after this.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Welcome back. You're watching Breakfast with Anne and Paul. Really good to have you with us. It is 24 minutes past 7. Should we do some sport?
Yeah, I had a lovely afternoon yesterday in front of a very big screen television watching the tennis. It was my idea of a perfect Saturday afternoon. Aidan McGee is here. You watching as well?
I was indeed, yeah. It was fantastic. I mean, we mentioned Nadal making short work of Sonego. He had an incident at the net, actually, with Sonego.
Yes, you see, I missed that. I'd already fallen asleep.
Yeah, it was
by
about
then.
the most interesting thing in the match. I mean, as I say, it was a really comprehensive performance. It was Nadal's best performance of the championship by some distance, but he brought Sonego to the net just over his etiquette because he made a noise during a shot. But meanwhile, on court one, we had this magnificent match, the match of the tournament so far, easily, Nick Kyrgios and Stefanos Tsitsipas, the number 4 seed. And it was a real adversarial duel going back to, well, it evoked memories of McEnroe and Connors back in the early...
And Ilya Nastase as well.
Yes.
It's funny because I was watching Nadal get started and it looked as though he was going to sort of wipe the floor with the other guy. And,
yes.
And clearly the people at the BBC decided that, this is getting a bit boring, this is almost dull. Let's go over because something really much more exciting and electrifying is happening on court number 1, and that was where Kyrgios was playing.
It got interesting in the second set, actually, because although Kyrgios was trailing, he felt that Tsitsipas had erroneously, sent this kind of wayward shot into the crowd and it hit somebody. And so he felt that he should have been disqualified by default, and he was saying that, and he's saying that if that had been me, then I would have gone as well. And it kind of invoked memories of a couple of years ago at the US Open when Novak Djokovic did the same thing, and there wasn't anybody in the crowd there, but it was a line judge that he hit, and he was actually disqualified in the first set from the US Open. He was a champion at the time, I believe. Yeah. So that was the kind of controversy, but it was also a fantastic match. I mean, there were trading
the tennis was high quality and
outstanding.
And Kyrgios, he loves to play that kind of pantomime villain role.
Well, I think he needs to wind himself up.
Well, he does. He needs to wind himself in, I would say, to put it more
up and in.
Well, he does because he was chipping away at the umpire throughout the match. I mean, Tsitsipas afterwards accused him of being a bully and constantly bullying him and constantly bullying the officials. And he said there's an element of evil about him as well. So really strong words from Tsitsipas. There's no love lost between those two, even though they used to be doubles partner.
Did they? You wouldn't have known.
They did. And
they
then on the
looked
court,
as though they absolutely hate each other.
On the court afterwards, there was the post-match interview. And he says, I hope Tsitsipas is all right. I'm friends with his brother, as if that makes everything all right. But he's a danger to anybody else going forward, Kyrgios. I mean, he's got all the talent in the world, but he needs to control those tantrums because sooner or later he's going to come unstuck.
Well,
and that's why somebody of his talent is... I mean, I think the best he's done is 2014 at Wimbledon in the quarter-final. For somebody of his ability, at the age of 26, should really have done more. He should have a slam under his belt by now.
Yeah, because he's very good. And if he just controlled that temper, because the temper takes you out of the zone, as they call it.
I'm surprised he... What was interesting, though, Paul, was that the angrier he got and the more he chipped away at the officials, the more the Court One crowd actually got on side with him.
I was just going to say that. I mean, I know our champions in the last 8 or 10 years are cool.
Yes.
They're
it
cool,
wasn't always
they're
like that,
controlled. No, I mean, you look at McEnroe and Nastase. There used to be fireworks.
Yeah, without doubt. I mean, McEnroe was actually not that popular when he was playing at Wimbledon. He did actually get the crowd
but it
against
worked
him.
for him.
Yes, it did. But subsequently, I mean, Connors was no saint either.
No.
But subsequently, people actually fell in love with him. That's why he's doing exhibitions now, and that's why he's still a very important person in tennis. But there was other stuff as well going on. As you said, Rafa Nadal got through in straight sets against Sonego. Got a big day today as well. Cameron Norrie on court one with up against Tommy Paul, number 30 seed, and another doubles partner. He's been practicing with him in the lead up to the tournament. You might pay for that, given that they're going to know each other's strengths a little bit. And then we've got Heather Watson on court, centre court, opening up against Jule Niemeyer, the German, as well. So that's a tough game for her, but she's really come into her own in this tournament.
Correct. This might be a stupid question, but I thought the middle Sunday was no play at Wimbledon. Was that?
No. We've got some.
It used to be a few years ago.
Yeah.
And then they brought in Sundays.
They changed. Middle Saturday was always a big day, and that's We saw the it's really interesting stuff in this week in terms of the attendances, and we saw some big attendances yesterday. Although having said that, the tournament's shrinking slightly because we're getting to the
business end.
Yes, exactly. And so Heather Watson's had to sort of ease up her schedule as well. She wasn't in the mixed doubles. She had a knee problem earlier in the week, so she decided to reduce her schedule in that regard. So, but as I say, we lost two British hopes yesterday, Liam Brodie and Katie Bolter, but we've still got two left, and they're on today.
Yeah, I think the girls' tennis is shaping up better than it has been for years. I think a lot of it's to do with the fact they don't grunt anymore, which is thank goodness. But I think their tennis is better to watch than it used to be.
Yeah, quite possibly. And Harmony Tan's been a real surprise.
Harmony Tan's doing very well.
Yeah, she is indeed. I mean, she made light work of Katie Bolter.
51 minutes?
Yes, exactly.
51 minutes?
I mean, I think the first set was 27 minutes, and that gave us an indication of where it was going to go. But
Lovely name, Harmony Tan.
I know, exactly.
Beautiful name.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Ronaldo, though, as well.
Ronaldo, he's off, or he wants to be off.
Yeah, I mean, look at it. He's they finished sixth in the league. They trailed Manchester City in the title last season by 36 points. He says he's got 3 years left at the top. He's got a year left on his contract, and he's just basically said to Manchester United, by the sound of it was exclusive by Duncan Castles, who's a friend of mine in the Times, and he's basically saying, I've got 3 years left on the top. I'm not going to achieve what I want to achieve in the time I've got left with this juggernaut club, Manchester United, which tells you how far Manchester United have fallen. Having said that, the question there is, where do you go next? He's obviously looked at United and thought, well, they've lost Pogba, they lost Cavani. It's 4.5 weeks now until the season starts. I mean, where are the players coming from? How are we going to, with the new coach coming in, Erik ten Hag, how are they going to make that adjustment in 4.5 weeks to be contenders? And it's very difficult. And for United to lose a player of that stature is enormous. He scored 18 goals in the Premier League last season. And now, in terms of where he goes next, I think Bayern Munich would be a decent fit for him because it allows him to go and win another league in a different country.
Yeah, he's not been to Germany, is he?
No, Chelsea is another one as well. I mean, Todd Bowley bought them in the aftermath of the sanctions. He seems to be wanting to do everything at the moment, including washing the kit. And he's gone and negotiated with Jorge Mendes, the
How many years has Ronaldo got left in him, do you think?
I think, well, he's 37. I think with modern...
Couple?
Well, he thinks 3, but then deep down he might even think 10. You never know with Ronaldo.
But no, he looks after himself.
We will enter the era now where footballers of that calibre, and we'll find out whether he's a freak of nature or whether he's part of a general kind of move towards players playing in their 40s. You know, with sports science, it is possible now.
Yeah.
We're seeing it in tennis as well. We've seen it in tennis.
Yeah, brilliant. Because obviously when you're not as quick anymore and you have to use this a bit more...
Yeah.
And that's where the great players do it.
Yeah,
like
well, he's got both, hasn't
Teddy
he?
Sheringham was one of my favourites. Played in his 40s.
Yes, he did.
Didn't have to worry about pace. He just thought quicker than everyone else.
Yeah, but Bayern Munich would be a good fit, but it leaves United in limbo really because that. I mean, some would say that he should have made his statement earlier in the window to give United a chance to replace him. But yeah, I mean, it's the season's just a few weeks away now, and I worry for Man United, especially with the new coach coming in and trying to adjust his plans around the loss of that
with
player.
no Big Ron.
Yeah, exactly. Not that Big Ron, the different Big Ron.
Yeah, the different, the other. Yeah.
Well, we'll talk Grand Prix as well a bit later on in the programme.
Back for that,
We've got lots more to talk about. By the way, that's one for you. Your favourite tennis player of the past and why?
Ooh.
GB Views at gbnews.uk. And tell us where you're watching us from. It's lovely to get your name, but it's nice to actually figure out where you're actually watching us from too. So your favourite tennis player of the past and why?
Yeah, GBViews at gbnews.uk. Stay with us. We're going to go through the papers with Andre Walker and Mary-Ann Ahota, and some say we have the Stig on soon. Stay tuned to find out.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Hello again.
What was that?
Hello.
Excuse me?
It's because I was trying to figure out what's happening. And I went into my hello there mode.
What, but who was
It's a
that
cover.
meant to be?
It's Monty Python, isn't it? Hello.
Oh, I see.
Hello
When
there.
they play the little old lady.
When they're confused.
Isn't it?
Something like that. I can't remember, honestly. I was never that much of a Monty Python fan, but it's obviously sank in
Shall we
somewhere
do
along
the
the
front
line.
pages then?
Yeah, stuff it, yes. Let's look at the front pages. Well, the Telegraph leads on the damaging allegations against Deputy Chief Whip as it's revealed that the Prime Minister turned a blind eye to sex pest warnings. That's their phraseology.
The Times leads on the latest allegations that the Prince of Wales took money from foreign donors against the advice of his courtiers.
And the Observer covers the official probe into the Prime Minister's plan to build 40 new hospitals by 2030.
The Mirror leads on the PM's failings to crack down on Pincher despite warnings.
So let's go through the papers now, and joining us is Mariana Hutter and Andre. Forgotten your surname there.
The Giants.
Yeah.
Peter Andre.
Yes, that's right. Not quite. Okay. Yeah, that's where I come back to my confusion because I didn't know my order of things. What are we going to first?
Let's start, Marianne, with the cost of living.
So this is a piece in the Times about how children's doctors, paediatricians, are warning that there's a generational impact on children's health because families can't afford healthy food. Because obviously, if you're not eating healthy food as a kid, you have a lifetime of legacy from that. So your body grows in a different way, your brain develops in a different way, and of course, it's not just about food or malnutrition, although they've said that in 2020, 487 children were diagnosed with clinical malnutrition going into hospital. So that's 500 kids almost who are so poorly they're in hospital because they've not been eating the right food. And that's not only, obviously, some of those cases might be much more complicated situations where there's childhood neglect or abuse or something like that. But some of these are simply because families are in such absolute poverty, such desperation.
Do you accept that? I mean, I did a documentary a couple of years ago with just an ordinary family, but the kid just ate nothing but pot noodles all day. That's all he ate. And it was basically because his mum didn't particularly care and didn't really know that there was anything not very nutritious about pot noodles. And it wasn't because they were so poor they couldn't afford stuff, because they could. They just had no idea of basic nutrition.
So I think there are those situations, obviously. This isn't what that is about. These are families where they really probably do know that eating an apple is better than eating a donut, but a pack of apples is £1.50 and a pack of 5 donuts is 80p.
Do you think that's really true? I find myself
if you're also
staggered at
working
that.
two jobs and you need to give your kids something because you've got 20 minutes before you need to get to nursery or school to drop them off to get to your work, because otherwise you're going to lose your job or you're on a
Yeah, but you're a
0-hours
parent
contract.
and you know that an apple... Well, maybe
You
not
are,
an
but
apple,
also
but
not
you know
losing
that
your job is important too.
Yeah, yes, but you know that there are better things to give them than a
No,
donut
but-
or a
but-
pot
but
noodle in front of the
equally,
telly.
I've got a number of friends who are kind of from traditional Pakistani households. Now, I'm not advocating this, but mum tends to stay at home and has the life skill of being a really good cook. I have to say to you, when you go and find fresh vegetables, they are not more expensive than junk food. They just aren't. Now, the problem is, do people have the time and so on and so forth? But I do think one thing, and I don't want to be a nanny state type person, but when you go to these aisles, you know, you used to get a packet of crisps that's that big. Now it's sort of 3 foot long for £1.
Yeah.
So I think there is a lot of rubbish out there, but I do think it's much more to do with the lack of the life skill of being able to cook properly.
I think it's time as well. I think poverty has a... When you kind of look at poverty, it's like a box with all the bad stuff in it. So it isn't just access to good quality food. It is also things like where you live, the level of the quality of the housing you're in, how much access to green space you have, whether your children have opportunities to do all those extracurricular things, whether they go to a school that's just bordering on kind of tolerably, acceptably decent, and that means that the teachers have less time, that there might be more issues to deal with in the classroom, that there's less money for sports equipment, that the parent-teacher...
I think, as you say, it's a perfect storm of a number of things, isn't it?
Yeah. And
Same documentary I made, I interviewed a nurse who... there was a McDonald's, I think, franchise in the hospital lobby, in the hospital where she worked.
Yeah, that's
and she said, when you've just worked 12 hours and you're completely exhausted and you've got to go home and feed the kids, it was just too tempting to be able to quickly just go in and buy 3 Happy Meals and take them on the bus with you.
Yeah.
And
Instead
we're
of cooking when
hardwired
she got home.
kind of...
It's a perfect storm of lots of things, though,
Yeah,
isn't
and we're
it?
hardwired to grab those salty
Especially
things,
when we're
the sweet
tired,
things, the fat
working a
things.
lot,
And yeah, of course, your rational brain is going, oh, well, this isn't good in the long term. But like you say, in that moment, you're just like, this is going to have to do.
Yeah, hence the word tempting. Shall we move on? Andre, you want to talk about online grooming?
Yeah, we're still on the subject of children, actually. But look, this is not the online grooming that we used to talking about. You know, people going onto internet chat rooms and so on and so forth. What's happened is there's been a large amount of hacking going on, and the details of young people and children are now available on the dark web to buy. So, I mean, effectively, I'm not a great expert in this field, but effectively, what is happening is your details are being sold to fraudsters. Now, for a lot of us, that just means you get a bit of junk mail that goes in the spam filter. But obviously, children and young people might not necessarily know, what the warning signs are. So it's incredibly worrying. But the level of information that is now for sale about you on these dodgy websites. Now, you can get some spy software and whatever, and I think that Dr. Norton thing, which will check for your details being for sale, but you have to be savvy enough to do it. And I really worry about this, because when I was a kid, you might watch your TV in your bedroom, but now the reality is parents very often do not know what their children are up to. And it's very, very difficult, because you don't want to, on the one hand, spy on them, but on the other hand, they just don't have the maturity to recognise the danger.
I think that's very true. When when my kids were young, I made sure that the computers were only in downstairs rooms, so I could always keep an eye. But that was before the days of every kid having a smartphone or a tablet, and you can't regulate it anywhere near so easily. Yeah.
I think, though, I wonder if at a certain point we're going to reach that sort of tipping point where actually the kids do develop the maturity. Of course, that's just life experience and being kind of worldly wise and savvy. But they'll have better understanding of the tech and the potential of risk and the value of their data as a kind of an asset compared to us, who are not digital natives.
Trend for people actually giving up their smartphones and buying instead dumb phones.
Dumb phones?
Dumb phones, which are, like the old little Nokia thing.
I've never heard it called a dumb phone.
Yeah, it's called a dumb phone.
I had a very good friend of mine who was telling me about her daughter going into secondary school, and something came up for her that she was really, really shocked by. Now, having been a 15-year-old boy, I'm not going to be critical of the people who've done this, because I think it's a maturity issue. But, of course, what they do is they've got a school WhatsApp group. Now, inevitably, when these kids come in aged 11, the sort of 15, 16-year-old post stuff that's highly inappropriate, which, of course, is thoughtless rather than evil.
The young ones
But the young ones are really quite shocked and upset by it. Now, of course, because these WhatsApp groups are supposed to be to do with homework, the kids are effectively... they're not dragooned into doing it, but they feel kind of obliged to be on there.
It's a bit sinister, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, then the parents are like, and some of this, I mean, I'm not going to repeat what she saw, and you know, I do think it's thoughtless rather than anything else. But of course, it is quite upsetting for some of these younger kids.
Yeah.
Maybe we should make a campaign for dumb phones.
Well, I think it's starting. It's catching on.
Very judgmental. That's very harsh on phones.
It's a phone that's just a phone.
Yeah,
just a phone.
And one that actually fits in your pocket and the battery lasts 3 days.
You remember the little ones? That's right.
Yeah.
The little Nokia 7612s.
They got a bit too small, and then you were kind of pushing...
Yes, and then you could barely read them anyway.
They got a bit silly, that.
Apparently there's a huge trend for dumb phones. So if you're a dumb phone owner, get in touch. How would you? How?
Yeah, how are you going to do that? You're going to have to get onto one of those old-fashioned computer things. Yeah, exactly. Marianne, most Brits prefer to eat their picnics inside.
Yes, this is a survey. Obviously, we're potentially going to have a heat wave this week coming. So if it's sunny, by all means, join the masses. 1/3 of us think that the beach is our best and favourite place to have a picnic. I think sometimes you get sand in your sandwiches.
Yes, you do.
Yes.
Only 1/5 of people rate parks as a good place to have a picnic. But if it rains, us Brits are a hardy lot. We're tenacious. We won't give up on the picnic. We'll just have it inside. Or other options.
Is it still a picnic? Discuss.
Inside a horse box. Or a motorcycle sidecar, or sitting in your car with the windows up, getting
a motorcycle sidecar.
It's very British, that, though, isn't it? I mean, no matter what the weather, we will picnic this afternoon, whether we like it or not.
My mother, God rest her soul, had a brilliant trick when we were little. We used to live in this little bungalow, and literally, probably about 10 foot away, there was a little public green. And once a week, she used to, during the summer holidays, she'd set up a picnic. And she said, what made me laugh was, you'd be there happily for hours. You're only 10 foot from the front.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
that's all right, though.
That's being innately British.
Yes,
that's very, very important.
Yeah.
We've run out of time, but we'll see you again. Yes?
Yes,
In an hour's time. Thanks very much indeed. Should we go through the newspaper headlines now?
Let's do that at 7:44. Let's bring you up to date with what's happening this morning. The PM and the Chancellor have outlined what they're calling the single biggest tax cut in a decade. This is in the Sun on Sunday. They say Wednesday's rise in the national insurance threshold from just under 10 grand to just over 12.5 grand will save 30 million British workers up to £330 a year.
Now, the government's spending watchdog is planning to investigate the Prime Minister's 2019 election pledge, where he said he was going to build 40 new hospitals by the end of the decade. Because this comes after the Shadow Health Secretary warned that the plans are an absolute waste of taxpayers' money, with many hospitals having alterations or refurbishments, but they're not being built new.
Cyberbullying may be playing a key role in keeping mortality rates high amongst people with asthma. This is a study from Nottingham University. It says online abuse fuels a vicious cycle, meaning those with the condition trivialise it and can be less likely to take their medication. Let's talk about the biggest one-off sporting event in the British calendar. Yeah, the Grand Prix.
That's the
British
biggest
Grand Prix,
one-off sporting event.
140,000 people, I believe, over the weekend watching Ferrari's Carlos Sainz, who's in pole position. Ada McGee.
It's 400,000 over 3 days. You know that?
So it's 140,000, 400,000 people.
Yeah, it's a one-off event.
That makes it the biggest one-off sporting event.
I would argue. I mean, is it really a one-off event if it's spread over 3 days? I mean,
it's true. That's what they say.
Yeah, but even so, I mean, even if it's 140,000, I'm not sure that anywhere else can really match that. I mean, you couldn't get that many people into Wembley. You certainly couldn't get any of that. There's no stadium in this country big enough to host that. The only thing you probably compare it to is maybe one of the rock festivals or something, but that's not sport, is it?
Yeah.
So
it is massive.
Oh, it's absolutely enormous. Yeah, it is. I mean, Lewis Hamilton yesterday was disappointed that his great rival Max Verstappen, who stole the championship of him last season in controversial circumstances, he was booed on the way in. And Hamilton said that was beyond the pale.
Yeah,
we should be better. Right. We should be.
Where's
better
it all happening?
It's all happening at Silverstone, which is quite an old kind of. I wouldn't say quaint necessarily, but it's not one of the stellar courses or tracks.
You likened it to Fulham's ground.
Well, it is, it's
a bit old school.
Yeah, it is. I mean, Fulham have just built a new stand, actually, to be fair to them. But I mean, it's a bit quaint. It's a bit kind of. Fulham have been forced to stay there because they can't move anywhere else. But Silverstone is not. It's not like Sochi, for example, where the Russian Grand Prix was until very recently, until F1 pulled out of there. But I mean, it's not. So it's not one of the kind of the space age tracks, but it has that charm. And
history.
You mentioned history as well, without doubt. And so, but the numbers you're talking about there as well is testament to the fact that it still has a huge draw.
Yeah, it was quite easy to get to, isn't it?
It's in Northamptonshire, sort of on the border of Bedfordshire, so on the main line, on the trains, and also on the main artery.
And there over a bit.
That's right. Get it on the M1. Yeah, exactly. So, but Hamilton snatched fifth yesterday. So he'll be on fifth on the grid today. We've got Carlos Sainz. Was fastest in qualifying yesterday. He pipped Max Verstappen into second, so it's hotting up as the time goes on. But I'd have felt though that Hamilton has had problems with the car this season. But given the circumstances of how he lost the title last season, I do think that there's a bit of a hangover into this season. We do see it with sports people who've denied in very controversial circumstances that eighth title.
Right, well, shall I introduce you to somebody who is also really looking forward to it? He is the original Stig and ex-Formula One driver Perry McCarthy. Hello there, Perry. Are you looking forward to today?
I'm really looking forward to it. I'm always, even though I retired years ago, I'm on the edge of my seat whenever the start lights are up and I feel as if I'm in the cockpit with them.
I was half expecting you to just be sitting there wearing a helmet. And I wouldn't really know who you were at all.
Yeah, just explain for us, Perry, how big the Grand Prix is, the British Grand Prix, not just in the Formula One calendar, but also in terms of British sports events.
It's one of the very few that have got this kind of historical legacy because clearly there have been many new tracks added across the last 15, 20 years, but Silverstone has always been there. So it's got that kind of pride of place, that history, and to the British drivers, as Nigel Mansell once said, it kind of adds an extra half a second to you, knowing that the crowd are out there supporting you. So it's a big thrill. But Silverstone is a really big and fast circuit. So we're expecting some great overtaking opportunities.
You must have driven it, right?
Oh, yeah, I've raced there many times in different formula, all the way through to Formula One.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, let us introduce you to Aidan McGee, our sports guy. I don't know, have you two met before at all?
No, we've not met. But Perry, I wanted to ask you, I just mentioned a few moments ago that it just looked to me as if Lewis Hamilton was carrying a little bit of a hangover into this season, which is why it's taken a long time to literally get into gear, if you pardon the pun. I know he's had problems with the car as well. What do you think about that? Do you think he's finding his range now?
You know something? It's a contentious one because I, honest to God, think the same as you. I actually do, because Lewis is a brilliant racing driver, is full of passion, and the decision, which I think and many others think was unbelievably unfair at the end of last year, robbed him of his 8th world title. And I think that did have a real psychological and emotional blow. But, you know, Lewis is a hard nut. You have to have a strong head in this game, and he's probably getting over it now. But it's not been helped, as you mentioned earlier, by the technical difficulties the Mercedes team have run into with their aerodynamic problems. But so maybe Lewis is now getting into his stride. But more than anything, you've got to get that car working, because in this game, it's all about incredibly fine margins. And if the car's off by a little bit, you're really in trouble.
Does blame for that lie with the engineering team?
Well, it's engineering, but to a large degree, you're kind of hostage over the winter because you've got all these concepts and you create a design. And once you've got that design, you know, if it's a really big design, as Mercedes come in with, I don't want to get too technical here, but they've gone in for no side pods, but they've got enormous downforce. That's the air pushing the car at speed down onto the track. But what they've got is that the car keeps hitting the floor, which then stops the airflow underneath the car, and that chokes the airflow, which means there's no more downforce from that bit. So the car comes back up and it springs, then it gets downforce again, then it goes back down, then that chokes the airflow and it goes back up. Do you see what I mean? So it's got this pogoing effect, which we call porpoising, and that is not good for the car or for the tyres or for grip. And also physically, it is a killer for the drivers. It's really been hurting them badly.
So that sounds like a major design flaw.
Well, it is, but they're trying to engineer it out. Many of the teams out there have run into the same problem. with these new regulations for this year. So there's so many different things you can do, but Mercedes have struggled, as brilliant as they are, they have struggled to actually find out what this problem is. If it rains, and as we're seeing a little bit from Max doing a very dainty 360 in qualifying, if it rains, believe it or not, that'll help them because it will slow the cars down and you won't get that such violent porpoising. But this is what Mercedes and many other teams have been trying to overcome.
Well, chaps, we're going to leave it there. I know you want to go on talking racing.
Oh, I was going to compare that car to my old Ford Mondeo back in the day, but I never used to get that problem.
Oh, no, the comparison would hurt. Yeah. Oh, so, sorry, it's lovely to see you, though. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Perry. Yeah, thanks, Perry. Cheers
Perry,
for that.
The original
Cheers, guys. Cheers.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
thank you. Thanks a lot.
Perry. And thanks, Aidan, as well.
Yes,
Cheers.
I think we'll be talking a bit more about that a bit later on as well, anyway, though, won't we?
I think we will.
Royal news now.
Prince Charles?
Yes, well, Prince Charles, once again facing, well, I suppose a bit of scrutiny, a little bit of controversy, after the Sunday Times has revealed, holds up the Sunday Times, he awarded a royal honour to the businessman Lord Brownlow after accepting, well, about £1.7 million of donations from him. Yeah. So joining us for more on this and the other big royal news, because there's quite a bit around, is Charles Ray, former royal correspondent for The Sun. Hello there, Charles. Do you think there's anything a little bit stinky about this story?
Well, coming a week after, we had the Sunday Times revealing money was given to Charles and Fortnum and Mason's carrier bags. That next week it doesn't look that great. Trouble. I don't think he's actually in trouble. There's something going to be investigated by the Charity Commission over it, and as you quite rightly say, Lord Brownlow gave 1.7 million, and sometime a little bit later he received a Commander of the Royal Victorian Order award. Now, both Charles and Lord Brownlow, and if you remember, Lord Brownlow's name is because he was responsible for the refurbishing costs of Number 10 and was the potential donor for the tree house that was going to be built for the Prime Minister's son, which is on ice. So he's a controversial character in any case, and there were many palace aides who were warning that maybe we shouldn't do any deals with him. His company, his building company, was awarded a 1.2 million contract to carry out the work for this eco-friendly village, which hasn't really taken off in Dumfries. So, the Charity Commission will have a look at it, and we'll have to wait and see what the score is. The palace are denying any link between cash and awards. They're not linked. He was given that award as chair of the Prince's Foundation for Building Community. If you believe that, you believe anything.
Well, yeah, it's difficult to know, isn't it? I mean, obviously there is no allegation or anything like that the Prince hasn't given the money and used the money for charitable work. I suppose the question is what you consider a charity a failed eco-village, and whether or not there is the link between the award and the donation.
Well, that's right. That's where it looks, because we've had in the past very controversial things going on between charity donations and awards. And I see that the Mail on Sunday this morning has also got hold of some letters that were written by Prince Charles to his Prince's Foundation in the US, sort of bemoaning the fact that there wasn't enough money coming in from certain places. Now, the reason this is important is because in the past the palace have been saying that Charles really wasn't involved in actually gathering in the money, but these letters actually show he was certainly commenting on the money coming in before the money came in.
Do you think, Charles, that these kind of stories cut through with the public? Do you think they kind of influence how they feel about Prince Charles, or is this more a story for journalists?
I think it's more of a story for journalists, to be perfectly honest, Paul. I think the public will probably look at it and say, let's turn over, let's see what's happening in Love Island or something else. This type of story, it is important because we've got to keep an eye on, or not just journalists, we have got to keep an eye on what these things are doing. And there is no suggestion, I have to say again, there is no suggestion that Charles has actually done anything wrong in this.
Isn't it? And he is going to be king one day.
Yes.
Yeah. Charles, really good to talk to you. Thank you so
literally
much
in a
for
word.
that.
Yeah, thanks very much indeed.
Charles Ray there, former political correspondent for The Sun. Should we do some views?
I don't think we've got time. I think we might as well just speed ahead and join you at the top of the next hour when we'll be bringing you all the latest.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Chris Pincher faces 6 new claims of inappropriate behaviour just days after his suspension as a Tory MP.
Good morning. It's 8 o'clock on Sunday, the 3rd of July, and this is Breakfast on GB News with Anne and Paul. We're live across the whole of the UK on both your TV and your radio. Wherever you are, you can take us with you. But here is what you are waking up to this morning.
Former Conservative Deputy Chief Whip Chris Pincher has said he is seeking professional medical support amid new allegations of inappropriate behaviour stretching back more than a decade. It comes after he was suspended as a Tory MP following accusations he groped 2 men at a club in London.
The Foreign Office has condemned the exploitation of prisoners of war after 2 more Britons were captured by Russian forces. Andrew Hill and Dylan Healy are now facing the possibility of a Russian death sentence for what Moscow is describing as mercenary activities in the conflict.
And it's finally time for the British Grand Prix. Ferrari's Carlos Sainz snatched pole position in a soaking qualifying session yesterday, while Lewis Hamilton and Lando Norris will start 5th and 6th in today's race.
And don't forget, you can join in, as always, in any of our discussions by emailing us, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or tweet us @gbnews.
And you can subscribe to the GB News channel on YouTube to get all the latest on the big stories everyone is talking about. And we should start by saying a very good morning to Tash, who is watching from Estepona in South Spain.
Love it. Very jealous. Nice. Tony's sitting in a poolside in Pattaya. Pattaya?
Pattaya.
Pattaya in Thailand.
Yeah.
Enjoying the sun and playing catch-up on events. Thank you so much for making us feel so jealous this morning.
Yeah.
I'll bet it's lovely out there.
Indeed.
It's interesting, we were talking about the cost of living crisis during the newspaper review there, and Marianne Ohota is with us, and she was saying that the doctors are worried that now the cost of living crisis is so bad that they're seeing more and more children who are actually suffering from malnutrition. And we were talking about whether that's real malnutrition in that they literally cannot afford to eat, or that they're eating the wrong things, and whether we've lost the old-fashioned skills of knowing about nutrition and home cooking.
Yeah.
Nada says, I've been around many council estates and seen how poor people eat. They choose, this is Nada saying this, to spend their welfare payments on McDonald's and takeaways. I've shopped with them and cooked with them to show how cooking is cheaper and healthier, but no, they're not interested. It's not like they have a job to go to. They just loll around all day smoking and watching TV.
Yeah. Stephen Dudley, morning Steve, says our only income is our state pension of 11 grand. I cook good food every day using fresh vegetables. We run a car and have at least 2 caravan holidays every year. We are not in any debt and we pay our own bills. Incidentally, my pension is not a welfare benefit. It's something I've worked for over 50 years.
Of course you have. It's your pension. But it's interesting you say you have a pension, which means you are a certain age. And that's an age where you do understand about cooking good food, using fresh vegetables, saving up, scrimping here and there, not running into debt, paying your own bills. Is that something that younger people have not learned? And is it our fault for not passing that on? David says, on the subject of healthy foods being expensive versus junk food being cheap, I've just checked on Aldi, and you can buy a banana for 14p, a 5-pack of oranges for 60p, low-fat yoghurts, a pack of 6 for 60p. So it is possible to buy healthy and cheap. Education and giving kids what they want, not what they need, is at the heart of the issue.
Yeah, GBViews at gbnews.uk if you want to feed back to us on that one. In fact, on Chris Pincher, which we're going to talk about in just a moment, David says, and you're spot on it, if it had been women that he is alleged to have assaulted, there would have been an outrage. But because it was men he's alleged to have assaulted, it is not taken seriously.
No, I mean, and I must say that the difference in the way the whole story has been covered, there isn't outrage. No. There's scandal. There's a lot of journalistic words being flung around. You know, words like groping and inappropriate behaviour and sexual misconduct. All of these allegations, by the way, he denies. But those are the reports. But they're not. It's not the same outrage as if he had been allegedly inappropriately behaving inappropriately towards women.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's almost as though man on man is not seen as such a serious subject as man on woman.
Yeah.
And it clearly is, if you think it through, but...
Yeah. Let us know what you think. GBViews at gbnews.uk. There are more allegations of inappropriate behaviour today surrounding Chris Pincher following his suspension as a Tory MP. It comes after the MP for Tamworth said he's seeking professional medical support following accusations of groping 2 men while drunk at the Carlton Club in London. He quit as Tory Deputy Chief Whip on Thursday. He's now going to be investigated. He says he will fully cooperate with that investigation.
So for more on this, we're joined by John Ashmore, editor of CapX. Hello there. Thanks very much indeed for joining us. What sort of a predicament does this land the government in? Is it getting any worse, or do you think we're actually becoming a little bit desensitised to all this?
Yeah, I think that is a bit of a worry, that there have been so many of these kinds of stories that, like you say, we've become a bit desensitised. I do think there probably is something in what you were saying, Anne, about how people treat allegations towards men perhaps in a different way. Perhaps there's something to do with the kind of physical imbalance of allegations towards women, whereas with men it's not the same, considered the same thing, which I think is completely wrong, obviously. There's so many things to unpack here. As you say, there's even more allegations in the papers today. It's almost hard to keep track of all the different ones. There's a limit to how much we can say as journalists, given we are still in the allegations sort of area. We don't know who's necessarily done what. We don't know what evidence there is, but it just all lends to a sort of sleazy atmosphere that I think is very bad for the government. It's sort of redolent of the mid-90s, and we had lots of sleaze claims then as well. There are, for me, I think, a few separate issues here to tease out. One is, obviously, you've got to investigate the claims against Chris Pincher himself. We know he stepped down a few days ago. The fact that he was in a disciplinary role within the party, though, I think is what is really concerning. So I think we'll need an investigation into his conduct, but also into the processes that meant that he was in this position where apparently people were told that they should go to him with complaints about sexual misconduct. So I mean, there's just so many questions to answer at this stage. It's definitely not a good look for the government or for the Conservative Party itself.
Yeah, when I've spoken to Conservative MPs in the past, John, they often say that it's not just about when situations like this happen, it's about how the Prime Minister deals with it. And so this is as much a story about Chris Pincher as it is about the Prime Minister's judgment, and how one drunk night last week is now kind of growing and rolling, and other things are spinning off, and it's getting out of control. And it's the Prime Minister having control of that story that worries a lot of his MPs.
I think this is a pattern we've seen on all sorts of different stories. We saw it with all the Partygate stuff, where rather than getting ahead of the news cycle and delivering a firm, comprehensive response, I think too often the instinct is to try and sort of parry and block and say that, there's nothing to see here, when there self-evidently is. And then a few days later, the government is forced to kind of backtrack and say, oh, well, actually, no, we are going to, treat this with all due seriousness. So I think Number 10 put out a statement earlier this week, basically saying that, the kind of trying to draw a line under this. And I think that's totally the wrong sort of attitude to take with such serious allegations. Bear in mind, too, that Chris Pincher resigned from a job 5 years ago over quite similar sounding allegations. So it's not as though this has kind of come out of the blue. I think that's the aspect of it that will really concern people. The idea that if these allegations are true, that people seemingly had some knowledge about it and didn't necessarily act. And you've seen sort of excuses about how you can't sack someone based on hearsay. It's like, well,
yeah,
I think you can at least ask questions and have a robust discussion about it, and then decide what you're going to do. I mean, people are removed and shuffled from political roles all the time for all sorts of reasons. So I really don't buy that excuse at all.
Yeah, we've gone past almost the one man with the personal problem, haven't we? Because I know that he seems to have passed form, as they say. I know Anna Soubry, the former minister, has said she described him the other day as a troubled soul. And he has just released a sort of statement saying that he is now seeking professional medical help. That should have happened 5 years ago, shouldn't this? Not a promotion, ultimately.
It does seem rather strange. Although, I mean, I should really stress once again that I'm not saying which of any of these allegations are necessarily true or not, or what happened. But like I said before, I mean, the fact that people are so many people seem to be coming out now and making these kind of comments. If nothing else, it raises the question of why more wasn't done. What are the sort of disciplinary process? And I think also within Parliament, I think there's been a problem historically that people have not felt open or free to come forward with these sorts of complaints. I should also say that has improved a bit in recent years. There is now a better disciplinary and complaints process within Parliament, and a lot of that's thanks to the work Andrea Leadsom did when she was leader of the House of Commons. I think it's also important to stress to your viewers that although there are these allegations and other stories, there's a former MP in prison, Charlie Elphick, for sexual assault at the moment. We shouldn't tar all MPs or all people in politics with the same brush. There are plenty of very decent, and the vast majority of people in politics are very decent, hardworking, public-spirited people. Having said that, obviously, you should treat these kind of allegations with
Sure. Yeah, we totally agree with you, John. We're going to have to leave it there, but really appreciate your time this morning.
We'll
Thank you
talk
so
to you
much.
again.
Thanks,
John Ashmore, editor of CapX, and Tom O'Brien, by the way, has tweeted me. Morning, Tom. He says, would it be too much to ask you to update on speculation that Starmer has already received a fixed penalty notice and has not resigned? Appreciate it's not factual news, but that doesn't stop you on other stories saying sources say Any update from Durham Police? No, there isn't an update from Durham Police, is there?
Not that we know of yet,
No?
but we will do a bit more delving for you, although on a Sunday morning you wonder how much we'll find.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. It's certainly not in the papers anyway today. Shall we bring you up to date with the latest headlines? And the Prime Minister and the Chancellor have outlined what they're calling the single biggest tax cut in a decade, writing a joint article in The Sun on Sunday. They say Wednesday's rise in the national insurance threshold from just under 10,000 to just over 12,500 will save 30 million British workers up to £330 a year.
Government spending watchdog is to investigate the Prime Minister's 2019 election pledge to build 40 new hospitals by the end of the decade. It's after the Shadow Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, warned the plans are a waste of taxpayers' money, with many hospitals having alterations or refurbishments instead of being new.
The government wants security checks on new airport workers to be treated as a priority to prevent travel delays this summer. The Department of Transport claim counter-terrorist checks are being processed now in record time as shortages of baggage and security staff make everything worse.
The chair.
Yeah, thanks for all your... Yes, that's all right, don't worry. I think there's lots more views coming in, so thanks very much indeed for that. This is an interesting point. David says, once again, the Pincher affair shows that Boris Johnson lacks any form of moral compass. I am a Conservative voter, but Boris is to the Conservatives what Corbyn was to Labour. He is now the problem and not the solution. If the Tory party continues with him, the brand will be tarnished and we will be decimated at the next election.
Yeah. Gary says the human race isn't perfect, never will be. Move on. Morning to Betty in Dorset, who says even in the 60s and 70s, Westminster was known as the biggest knocking shop in the country, if not the world. Nothing seems to have changed. Any workplace should be a place of safety for men and women, and Westminster should be no exception.
Yeah, and any workplace, sure. Most of us work in places, don't we, where if you were so inebriated you couldn't stand up and you were actually allegedly groping people, you would be fired.
Well, as we've said before, though, Westminster is quite a unique place to work, the Parliament, because there is no HR department to go to, is there? So they're kind of trying to put these processes in place.
Damn well should be, shouldn't there? Because I think it's important that we have faith in the people we vote into government. Yvette said he's by no means perfect. I think you mean Boris here. But I still think he's the best we have for the job. I've always voted Labour, but I did vote Conservative from the start of Brexit. He does need to create a more hard line within his party, but he can't be held responsible for decisions made on an individual level. Surely the buck stops with the boss, doesn't it? And you could say that the climate is also, in most places I've ever worked, the climate of behaviour is set by the boss too.
Indeed. GB Views at gbnews.uk. A little bit of a tenuous link, but let's talk about climate now, because the chair of the UK's Climate Change Committee has said plans for a new coal mine in Cumbria are absolutely indefensible.
Despite being in favour of a transition to renewables, the Prime Minister hinted last month that he might approve the plans. This is plans for coal mining.
Yes.
Well, we're lucky to be joined now by a GB News viewer who is also a former coal miner, Robert Macmillan. Hello there, Robert. Hi, lovely to join you.
Good morning, Anne. How are you?
I'm very well. It's nice to have a GB viewer for us to talk to. So what do you think, first of all, about the idea of us going back and reopening a coal mine?
I believe that we should give permission for this new mine to be opened. And when you interviewed me some weeks ago, I said then that to fight the present crisis, we might look at strategic collieries.
Robert, as I understand it, this coal mine that Michael Gove will make an announcement on this week, we think he's going to say yes to it, that the coal is going to be used for coking, i.e. to make steel, and the steel industry, they get most of their coke and coal from abroad at the moment, but they're not saying that, yeah, we're definitely really excited about this Cumbria coal mine. They're not saying either way officially, but they're saying that, you know, there's not really any need for it at the moment.
Yes, I understand that. I think we have a small number of furnaces here, and I think about half of them would take British-produced coal. But I thought that we Brexited so that we could be more independent. And currently, it'll stop now, 40% of our coking coal came from Russia. I did just check the figures last night. It would be far better if we have our own supply. which we will transport on our own railways in a green fashion and not ship it around the world.
So, you obviously see the green argument, and the Prime Minister and others have been committed to sort of net zero, and coal mining is an industry of the past. But do you see it then just as a sort of short term, as you say, a strategic measure to help us through this transition and basically through a cost of living crisis at the moment?
I'm not against any proposal about climate change. Of course, climate change is happening. And the combustion of coal does put carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. I do see it as a short term. I see it as a medium term solution to all the terrible problems we're having of fuel at the moment, of pensioners not being able to afford gas. Gas is a premium fuel anyway. Surely it's better that they used coke. This is coking coal. It's for steel production. I'm not advocating a full return to electricity generation with coal, even though the government has already said that the current generators should continue running in the interim period. But after all this, I don't want us to again smash a small coal industry, as has happened in the past, when we need strategic collieries to protect us from all the vagaries that go on in the world.
Can you explain what you mean by strategic collieries?
Well, I think there should be enough here to fulfill enough production here to fulfill our domestic demands. There are 3.7 million users of solid fuel at home. I am one of them. It's a very frugal system. There is, I think, a 60,000 tonne, possibly more, heritage use of coal, and there are the steelworks which need coking coal.
Just explain for us, Robert, how important the coal mine industry has been socially for the communities where people such as yourself have worked.
In many communities, it meant everything. Now, if you look at a place like Stoke-on-Trent, just about every industry that they had has gone. Their pottery industry is half what it was, still thriving here. Stoke-on-Trent is still the centre of ceramic industry in the United Kingdom. Their tyre factory became a warehouse. Their profitable steelworks was knocked down, and all their collieries were closed. It's ever likely that the people of Stoke-on-Trent and the communities similar to those have felt angry about it. But here is an opportunity now to start to address some of that and get back to a more independent nation.
Would there be a workforce that can immediately be sort of drafted in? I mean, it's been many years since the mines were shut. What's happened to that workforce?
I've heard this discussed, and I have heard some of the old miners saying, enough for me, that's enough for me, mate. I don't want any more of that. But I wouldn't... actually, I still volunteer at a mining heritage centre, so I'm still active with it, and the competencies are still there, the rules are still there. There would be residual workforce in their 50s that could be drafted in, as you put it, from Britain if they wanted to be, but they could be trained as well. I'm also mindful that with some of the people that are coming from Ukraine, if they're coming from the Donbass, they're coming from a coal mining area, and you can bet your bottom dollar that they would be delighted to come and work in British mines.
Gosh, it does feel an awful lot to an awful lot of people like it's a giant step backwards. We thought we'd come out of an era where we sent people down coal mines. Do you understand that? There's a sort of emotional feeling that it's the wrong way to go.
Your researcher mentioned this yesterday, and she said, do you feel a fear when you go down a coal mine? Well, no, I don't feel a fear when I go down a coal mine any more than I understand a man going into combat feels a fear for his life. You do it because you think you're going to survive it. And the coal mines were heavily regulated. Safety rules were very serious. It is an industry which has its dangers inherently, but I don't think it's turning backwards. I think if you don't look backwards, you'll never go forwards. At least that's what Sir Winston Churchill said.
Appreciate your time this morning, Robert. Thank you for your insight. Really good to get your view.
Thank you very much indeed.
Yes, lovely to join
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks very much. You can always get in touch with us, and from time to time we will probably get in touch with you, like we just did there. So it's GB Views at gbnews.uk, and you never know, one day you might, as well as us maybe reading out your views on air, you might get a phone call from one of our people saying, why don't you come on the telly one day?
Well, indeed, yeah, because we do love reading out your views, but it's even better to get it straight
to talk to
from
you
yourself.
personally.
Yeah.
In a couple of moments, we'll be looking a bit more at the cost of living crisis and finding out what on earth you're meant to do about it. Right, looking ahead to today's weather, the UK is looking like another day of sunshine and showers, though some places will stay dry, so let's take a look at the detail. There'll be increasing amounts of sunshine across southwest England by lunchtime, with just a few lingering showers. Temperatures rising to 17 by midday. Light winds for all.
Sunny spells and scattered showers at lunchtime across southeast England and the London area. Still the odd heavy shower possible. Temperatures of 19 degrees Celsius.
To Wales now. Wales is going to see a mixture of sunshine and showers. Some could still be on the heavy side. Light winds and temperatures reaching 18 degrees.
Scattered showers for the Midlands, some possibly heavy in places. However, there will be plenty of sunny spells in between the showers, helping to lift temperatures to around 18 degrees Celsius. Light winds as well.
North East England will see a mix of sunny spells and scattered heavy showers this lunchtime. Some sunshine developing at times too. Temperatures slowly lifting to around 17.
It is a mixed picture for Scotland at midday. Mix of sunshine and showers, those heaviest and most frequent across the south of the country.
Scattered showers continuing for Northern Ireland, rather cloudy skies, but there will be some sunshine which will help lift temperatures to about 16. Little breezy along the north coast too.
Showers will clear eastwards through the rest of the day, allowing dry weather to move on. And that's how the weather is shaping up for the rest of Sunday.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Morning, it's very nearly 8:26. What's wrong? What did I do?
Huh? They're just laughing at you. Morning.
Oh, sorry, I'm in one of those funny
It
moods
was like when you
sometimes.
come into someone's bedroom in the morning, you bring them a cup of tea.
Yeah, you put on your morning voice, don't you?
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, but it is a good morning.
We're talking about the cost of living and how worried everybody is about it. And earlier on in one of the newspaper reviews, we were talking about doctors being very worried. They're seeing children who are suffering from malnutrition. And why is that? Is it because they literally cannot afford the food to eat? Or is it because whatever food they are affording is not particularly nutritious. Alan says, my daughter's friends stayed with us for a few days and I cooked them Sunday lunch. They were surprised I didn't throw away the leftover veg and I told them I was going to cook Bubble and Squeak for tea. They recoiled in shock at the thought of eating reheated veg. I cooked it for them with slices of bacon. They were blown away by it and loved it. Kids and families need educating on how to use all the food they have.
There you
I
go.
so agree.
Yeah.
And Bubble and Squeak is one of the best
It
meals.
is great.
Absolutely
Why is it
lovely.
called Bubble and Squeak? I'm always wondering that.
Do you know, I've got absolutely no idea.
Someone would say, where'd you...
Is it Bubble is because it's often fried potato. Bubble, I think, is the white bubbly veggie and potato, and Squeak is the pork of a pig. Is it pig going? Is it? I don't know. I don't know. I'm only making that up. Is there anything in that?
That's a decent theory.
Why is Bubble and Squeak called Bubble and Squeak?
Yeah, because you don't want people saying they've run out of
Absolutely
bubble, they've run out of squeak. Where do they get it from?
It's the sound the ingredients made when they're fried. That's what I was told.
Okay. Fair enough.
sure
All right.
about that. I'm
Anyway,
not sure
yeah,
about that.
Bubble and
We'll
Squeak,
look-
very
we'll Google
tasty.
that for generations.
Sue in York says people are malnourished due to poor diets. Your food is your medicine. Good health is 80% non-processed, healthy, fresh food and fluid and 20% exercise. That's Sue's formula.
Yeah. Carol says, I worked in the NHS for years as a manager. I've always thought the education of children needs to start while mum is pregnant. It would be great to show as a class all of what nutrition and value they can do for their child. Educating after the damage is done is wasted. It would also help with diabetes and obesity. So get you on that as well.
Yeah, indeed.
I mean, it sounds paternalistic, doesn't it? It sounds like nanny state having to tell us how to cook. But, you know, frankly, if we have skipped a couple of generations where these very old-fashioned skills haven't been passed on, then maybe we've got to make up for it by being a bit nanny state-ish.
Well, is it the nanny state-ish or is it more informed? GB Views at gbnews.uk.
One more from Les very quickly. We have generation after generation of adults who have little or no experience with parenting, budgeting and how to run a household. Telling people to buy fresh, low-cost food and cook meals is in theory good, but in reality pointless because many just can't do it.
Thank you for that. Do let us know what you think about that. Drop us a line or tweet us, actually, at GB News. And speaking of the cost of living, the British Chambers of Commerce says most businesses expect their prices to rise in the next 3 months due to the pressure of record inflation.
And of course, that's utility bills and labour costs and fuel and raw materials are all the main drivers of rising costs. So what do you do about it? Vicky Price is Chief Economist Advisor at the Centre for Economics and Business Research and joins us now. Hello there, Vicky. I mean, there's a question for you. We all accept what's going on and what's causing the cost of living crisis, but what to do about it? What would be your easy fix?
If you look at what firms can do, I mean, you've already had an outline earlier, I saw, that there are some places which sell food a lot more cheaply than others. And of course, you have to search around. But of course, searching around is costly. You need to travel further, and of course, that costs as well. So it's not necessarily a very easy solution. There are bits around the country which don't have really access to where perhaps that cheap food might be. So one has to be very innovative, I'm guessing. But the interesting thing about whether you're going to be charged an awful lot is whether businesses are feeling at all confident in increasing the prices sufficiently to cover their costs. So although the British Chamber of Commerce is saying that a very large percentage of firms want to raise their prices and will be raising the prices, which has been a consistent path we've seen over the last few months to meet all those costs. What they cannot do is increase their prices to completely cover their costs because the consumer is simply not going to be able to buy the stuff because real wages are falling, as we know. So there's a conundrum there. So the real concern is, are those businesses going to survive in the future? Even your corner shop, if you like, that we all perhaps depend on. Because, of course, if they cannot pass the price, their cost to the consumer, the profits will suffer. And what I think the British Chambers of Commerce is saying, and what the CBI is saying, and what loads and loads of other organisations are now telling you, is that business confidence is falling, that a very large percentage of firms are right now not profitable. And the real question is, what is going to happen in the future? Will unemployment even start increasing as a result of all this? So it's not just the individual cost of living issue, it's really what's going to happen to the economy in the longer term which should worry us right now.
Yeah, so something the government could do then for businesses and by proxy us, all of us, is cut taxes. It could do that, couldn't it?
Indeed, I think the discussion which is going on right now is what to do with VAT in particular. Yes, the Chancellor is saying that, and the Prime Minister, that we're cutting taxes because we're increasing the threshold for national insurance contributions for when you start paying them. But in reality, those national insurance contributions have gone up. So they've given back something, but they're taking away a lot more overall. So it's not necessarily a tax cut as such when you look at the overall context within which that is being discussed. But yes, VAT is being done actually in other countries. And we did have that for a while in the hospitality sector, if you remember, and that was pretty good because it helped them hugely. It went down to 5% and then gradually has come back up to 20% again. Now, if you were to reduce VAT across the board, then that would bring prices down overall, and of course help businesses as well, because VAT is paid on all sorts of services that they're involved in, and everything that they buy, of course, they can claim some of it back. But yes, that is considered to be a possibility, and businesses are asking for it, not just for the energy sector, for example, where that is being debated a lot, but also more widely, because that will also reduce the inflation expectations of people, because everyone's worried about how they're going to survive in the future. Everyone wants to have pay rises which cover this. If you think that inflation is going to slow down in the future or suddenly drops, then perhaps your demands aren't going to be that great.
Vicky, really good to get your thoughts this morning. Thank you so much, Vicky Price, their Chief Economist Advisor at the Centre for Economic and Business Research. Talking about this change in national insurance, Stephen says, talk about the biggest tax cut in a decade, £330 back in the pockets of the taxpayer. Don't make me laugh. I put an extra 80 quid a week fuel in my van. So that's 600 quid a month. How much extra tax is that over a year? Well, a lot more than £330.
I'm very glad that Vicky Price said that, because when you look at the Chancellor and the Prime Minister have done a double-page spread in... I can't even see where that camera is. There we are. There you go. The double-page spread there in the Sun. We're about to put some more of your pay back in your pocket, £330 each, calling it the biggest tax cut in a decade or something, when it isn't. I mean, it just plain isn't.
Well, when you look at the overall picture...
Well, but as Vicky Price said, it's just by them putting up a little bit the cap on national insurance when they'd already raised it. So to dress it up as a tax cut, as a Tory tax cut, does it convince you? I wonder. We'll have a look through the newspapers in a couple of moments.
Yeah, see you then.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Good morning. Hello. What are we doing now? Should we look through the front pages or should we go straight into the newspapers? All right, we'll look at the front pages.
Let's have a quick whiz through the front pages first, starting with The Observer.
Yeah, The Observer covers the official probe into the Prime Minister's plan to build 40 new hospitals by 2030.
Yeah, the Star leads on warnings to cut back on washing to save water.
The Express calls on the Prime Minister and Chancellor to reduce taxes ahead of the next general election.
Time to go through the papers then. Joining us this morning is anthropologist Mariana Hota and political commentator Andre Walker. Morning both.
Hello.
Hello. What are we doing first?
We're talking about the Westminster scandal, I suppose. Marianne, yeah?
Yeah, that's it. So, Number 10 are apparently worried that there might be another by-election triggered because Chris Pincher has had the whip withdrawn but has not yet been sacked or resigned because of the allegations of him... Well, no, the fact of him getting incredibly drunk. He does not deny that bit. And the allegations that he groped two men... which counts as sexual assault. I mean, like, we can call it groping and that makes it sound less bad, but it's sexual assault.
Do you know, again, on one of our viewers, and several of our viewers, June says, hi, June, do we know if this was sexual intent or just schoolboy mucking about? And Ian says, take a step back. We're sacking someone because he had a drink and groped someone. Really? It may not be appropriate, but is it really sackable?
Yeah.
So that is the and we should say these are the allegations that are being made, which he denies.
But I mean, in more broad terms, if you were to grope me, I would want you to lose your job over it, and vice versa. I should not be allowed to lay hands sexually on you either. I think this
actually
that's the law.
And we've been continually saying allegedly. This is the value of having a process, because actually you don't really want to try this by the court of public opinion, because clearly there are gradients of the level of anything that's bad behaviour. And so I think it is right there's a process. But I make that point simply because for a long time there was no process whatsoever. You know, you are employed by your Member of Parliament. If you fall out with your Member of Parliament, there's no HR department really to speak of. The behaviour in the Strangers Bar, I mean, I'll tell you something I always said about the Strangers Bar, the House of Commons. It's the only pub I'd ever been into where on New Year's Eve it was less busy than on a Tuesday, right? So, you know, the people were in there absolutely getting...
Why is it called the Strangers Bar? Just strangers are people who are...
So there's the members' bar, and then there's the place where you can take guests. But, you know, when I worked there, I made the definitive list, when I worked for the New York Observer, I made the definitive list of everywhere you could buy an alcoholic drink in the Palace of Westminster, and I made it 29 outlets. Wow. Now, I think most people would think that is excessive. The Bishop's Bar, the Strangers' Bar, the members' smoking room, which obviously you can't smoke in anymore. I think it is going a bit too far. And look, Chris Pincher's defence, effectively, is that he's got a bit of a drink problem and is getting some help. But, I mean, you're so drunk that you've completely lost control of yourself. I mean, I think is just a pretty sad place to be.
Yeah. But I think the other thing is that, the kind of comments, Andre, I know we were talking about this earlier, the idea that because you were drunk, it's OK. Oh, I got really drunk, so I stole this old woman's handbag. I got really drunk, so I punched someone in the face.
Yes, those do hear it being used as an excuse.
I got really drunk, so I sexually assaulted them. Oh, OK, well...
I think what he will attempt to say is, and now whether he's right to do this, whether he should get away with it, but he's going to try and push it towards, I've got an alcohol problem that I'm now seeking treatment for. Now, you know, whether that is acceptable to people, I guess he's going to depend on whether the rest of the allegations were proved and to what extent they were serious.
I think the broader question is, from Boris Johnson and the rest of government, are we seeing the right response? So, out with the specific allegations about this particular individual, Chris Pincher, is this actually something about standards that we expect from people in positions of public authority, public servants, and should we be expecting better? Should we kind of say, hang on a minute, allegations of compromising situations for the Prime Minister and wanting to give his then-girlfriend, you know, a six-figure job, things over corruption over PPE scandals, things over allegations and kind of the fact that, you know, the government are more willing to write off huge fraudulent debts rather than...
So we're talking about judgment. We've got to move on. But, Andre, you've seen a story about Joe Biden being jealous of Boris Johnson's
Yeah, I'll weave them both in. But Joe Biden has said that he's jealous of. I didn't mean to do it. But he said he's jealous of Boris Johnson's hair. By the way, arguably, I was so drunk I didn't know what I was doing. He's actually not as bad as. Oh, pincher by name, pincher by nature. Let's hire him anyway, right? But I'll throw that out. But apparently, look, you know, the American president is really, you know, jealous of a number of people's hairs. Apparently, he likes James Corden's hair and he likes Harry Styles' hair. Now, I've got to be honest with you, I'm no fashion guru, but Harry Styles dressed like my grandmother.
But this is an old man just saying he wish he had more hair, isn't it? I mean, he's very old.
Who says that he's saying this? Where's this come from?
Good point, right? Just kidding. Talk amongst yourselves.
He gave an interview to, you know, Hello magazine or something.
He did.
He was asked the question. I'm sure it's not something that, you know, keeps him occupied most of the day.
Yeah, I feel like he's sort of demonstrating some degree of cultural literacy by being able to name Harry Styles.
But if you think about it, imagine the only good thing as the Prime Minister of Britain that anyone's ever said about you is the American president goes, I quite like his hair. It's just damning with fake praise.
It's not the only thing. It won't be the only. That's the trouble with misreporting.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Can we move on to the Queen's health, Andre?
Yes, we can. So, obviously, the Queen has various duties. Some are formal, that are legally required. Some are by tradition. The new list has been published, and obviously, it is significantly smaller than it used to be. Obviously, the thing that most people will remember is the Queen's speech is now out. Now, remember, she doesn't have to attend. She can send a letter, she can send a representative, or she can send the Lord Chancellor. Obviously, she's now decided that Charles will do this from now on. There used to be 13 points on the list, and that has now declined. But obviously, things like signing legislation she's still required to do. But actually, in terms of her constitutional duty, the legal stuff, there isn't actually a lot of it. It is signing legislation, formally appointing the Prime Minister.
So there isn't an official job description of Queen?
No, well, exactly. And different people will do it in different ways. I think one thing that's going to be hugely interesting is Prince Charles is much more interested in the regulation of government, whereas the Queen, I think, has seen it as her principal role to be, you know, a rock of continuity for the country. But of course, we all love her to bits, but there is a criticism of the Queen that she was unwilling to intervene. I mean, when she turned around and said she would never use her veto, well, she is legally empowered to protect the public by having it. She would never sack a Prime Minister. Well, that is her job. I think Prince Charles will be much more interested in exercising those powers.
Have you seen the drama Charles III?
No.
Oh my goodness, you've got to see it. Yeah, it was an award-winning play on the West End for a couple of years, and they now made it into a movie. And it takes the situation where the Queen has sadly died and Prince Charles has become the monarch, and he has a serious falling out with his own Prime Minister, and it gets to the point of tanks on the front yard of Buckingham Palace. It is brilliantly written. It's also written in sort of Shakespearean language. I can't remember. I wish I could remember the name of the playwright. I'll look it up. It is absolutely brilliant, but it takes that very scenario that Charles is going to be a very different sort of monarch, and it will mean that occasionally he will actually noticeably disagree with his own government.
I think
Mike Bartlett was the playwright, and he refuses to sign an act of law. He refuses to sign it.
But we teach kids in school that Britain has a bicameral system, that it has two chambers of Parliament, and that is simply not true. There are three chambers of Parliament. The Lords, the Commons and the Crown all have to agree for legislation to pass.
Yeah. And if one disagrees, vehemently disagrees, well, ultimately, any act of law has to be signed by the monarch.
Yes.
It has to have the signature of the King or Queen. And if he or she refuses, that causes a constitutional crisis, the like of which has never actually happened.
Yeah, well, but
the only first time it happened, the King got his head chopped off.
It may be legally possible, but will the people buy it?
Well, the thing is, what I think you've got to remember is, if you don't want a scenario in which the King or Queen has a veto, then, you know, change the system.
Yes.
But what I find... Yeah, exactly. What I find odd is to turn around and say, our system, all these three bodies have to agree, but we're just going to pretend that one of them doesn't.
Yes, that's right.
Which is a bit bizarre.
That's sort of what we've got.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. I think we've come to the end of our timing, have we?
Yes, we have.
Yes, we have.
So we'll have to leave it there, Marianne.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you again. Look forward to seeing you again.
Right, let's go through the headlines. Talk about the Formula 1 Grand Prix in just a moment. Before that, at 8:45, let's bring you up to date with this morning's news.
Well, the Prime Minister and the Chancellor have outlined together what they're calling the single biggest tax cut in a decade. Writing a joint article in The Sun on Sunday, they say Wednesday's rise in the national insurance threshold from just under 10,000 to just over 12,500 will save 30 million British workers up to, wait for it, £330 a year.
Elsewhere this morning, cyberbullying may be playing a key role in keeping mortality rates high amongst people with asthma. This is a study from Nottingham University. It says online abuse fuels a vicious cycle, meaning those with the condition trivialise it and can be less likely to take their medication.
And thousands of Australians have been ordered to evacuate parts of Sydney after torrential rain brought intense flooding. Vehicles have been left marooned and sports fields turned into lakes, with the Met Office warning that the downpour will intensify over the next 2 days.
Let's talk about the British Grand Prix then. Ferrari's Carlos Sainz snatched pole position in a rain-drenched qualifying session yesterday. Lewis Hamilton and Lando Norris will start 5th and 6th.
In today's blockbuster race?
In today's blockbuster race.
Yes, absolutely. Right. Let's join Formula 1 journalist Rosanna Tennant, who is live at Silverstone at the moment, where I imagine things are getting very exciting. Morning.
Good morning. Yes, excitement is really ramping up, but I have to say it's been exciting all weekend long, and the fans are here in their thousands. We're expecting about 140,000 today and 400,000 over the course of the weekend. So lots of excitement, a lot of people excited to see what the British drivers can do.
Is the weather forecast favourable? Because we saw the practice runs in absolutely rain-soaked condition.
Yeah, it's been a tricky weekend. Our first practice session on Friday was a bit of a washout. The teams didn't really decide to do much running out on track. Then we had a bit of a drier session on Friday. And then yesterday, as you mentioned, the qualifying session, just a really tricky one for the teams and drivers to navigate. We had such heavy rain, especially in the second part of qualifying. And I think that caught out quite a few drivers. And so we've got quite a rumbled up grid for this afternoon's British Grand Prix, which is great, I think, for the fans who are tuning in and who are watching trackside.
And Lewis Hamilton will be looking for some revenge for last year's British Grand Prix.
Yes, of course. Last year we saw Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen coming together at Copse. It was a huge moment in the championship battle. I think we're unlikely to see the same again, but I think he'll be looking to put on a show for the British crowd. But he's starting down in 5th, so he's got his work to do. He's going to have to clear the Red Bulls and the Ferraris, who've looked mighty quick this weekend. But I'm sure if anyone can do it, it is the 7-time world champion Lewis Hamilton. Sir Lewis Hamilton, of course.
Well, indeed, yeah. And we're hearing that the car is quite unreliable that Lewis Hamilton drives.
It has been a little bit tricky for the Mercedes team this year. They've been struggling with a phenomenon called porpoising, which is where the car effectively just bounces up and down when it's travelling along a straight. It does seem that they've got on top of that issue, especially here at Silverstone. They've changed a couple of things on the car. It seems to be better. And so we're thinking it could be a better weekend for them. Although they were looking a little stronger, it has to be said, in practice. So qualifying perhaps for Lewis and for George Russell, his teammate, of course, another British driver. He'll start this afternoon's race from P8 to 8th on the grid, and as I said, P5 for Lewis Hamilton. So perhaps they're a little bit disappointed, but I do think they've made a little step on this weekend.
And what time does it all get started? What time do the crowds start to arrive?
They're already here. They're here in their thousands. As I drove in this morning, quite nice and sunny as I drove into the circuit. Lots of people already staking out their place trackside, lots of picnic blankets, lots of people with bacon butties in hand. So many people camp here over the course of the race weekend. So they're not going anywhere. They're all bagsing their spot so that they can see all the action unfold. We've already got racing. You might have heard it in the background there. We've got the F3, the feeder series going on at the moment. So plenty of things to enjoy while they're here. But it all kicks off at 3 o'clock. That's when the lights go out this afternoon.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Thank you, Rosanna. Really good to see you. Thank you, Rosanna Tennant there at Silverstone.
And Stephanie Tetchy has just joined us. Hi.
Good morning.
Plenty going on today
How was
as well.
Your afternoon yesterday?
I had a lovely, very lazy afternoon, really, just lying on a big couch in front of an enormous television. I went to see my friend. She's got this enormous television room and just enjoyed the Wimbledon. So it was just brilliant.
Nice.
That's my idea of a perfect Saturday afternoon, actually. Lazy day.
I like that.
Yeah. We got lots of stuff to to talk about, though. I mean, Adele, first of all. We were
Yeah.
talking about her yesterday, but she's been speaking more about what she called the backlash after her Las Vegas cancellation.
Yeah, she's been opening up on quite a few things, actually. So this week, she's a guest on Desert Island Disc on Radio 4.
Oh, that'll be a goodie.
Yeah,
I wonder what she'll
can't
choose.
wait. Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
I can't wait to listen to it myself. But I do know the big topics that have come out of it. First of all, she talks about Las Vegas and cancelling the shows. And she said it left her as a shell of her former self. She says that just all the backlash she received, it really affected her confidence and was giving her anxiety attacks as well.
Well, we thought that's why she cancelled it.
Yeah.
So it only made it worse, really.
Definitely. And also, she talks about, because we know Adele's lost all this weight. And she talks
Where's it all
about,
gone? That's what I want to know.
I want to know how she lost it.
Yes, me too.
But she talks about how basically she got backlash from a lot of young fans who were saying that she kind of let them down because she lost all that weight and it kind of gave her confidence issues as well. So that will be a good listen for any of our viewers who
You can't win, can you? If you're overweight, which she was.
Yeah.
She was very large, and a lot of people saw her as a champion for large people.
Yeah.
She never said that herself.
Yeah.
And she managed to have this absolutely incredible career despite not looking the picture-perfect image you'd always think of. Then suddenly, because she wants to, she loses the weight and still looks unbelievable. And a lot of people think she's let them down.
Well, people think it's like...
You can't win, can you?
No, not at all. And people think it's kind of the part and part of the parcel of when you go to Hollywood, all of a sudden you become very LA, which she's been accused of many times. But I think this weekend, and with her BST Hyde Park, she's very much still a Londoner and proud to be at home. And yesterday she paid tribute to all of the Pride celebrations that was going on, and she wrapped herself in a rainbow flag. And I was like, go Adele. But yeah, so it was good to have her back.
If you're as successful as she is, oh, there she is, yes, with her lovely flag on.
Yeah.
If you're as successful as her and as talented, and absolutely, I don't think anyone would say she doesn't deserve her success. She really does.
Yeah.
Why shouldn't she do what the heck she wants to do? If she wants to go a bit LA, go for it, girl.
So, well, I've always said that there's this thing where the public sometimes feel like we own celebrities and we have a right to kind of have an opinion on everything they do and say. And that's why I always feel sorry for celebrities, because they do feel like I can't just be me, and there's always going to be people who have stuff to say.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Always an
Yeah.
opinion.
We were watching Wimbledon yesterday, weren't we, both of us? And but I don't know anything about Tom Daley being in the Royal Box. Tell us about that.
So there's been lots of celebrities that have been in during Wimbledon, and Tom Daley and his husband Austin Dance Black were one of the people that were there. So I'm quite surprised he wasn't at Pride, actually, because usually he's quite...
I wish they'd linger
there.
longer over the celebrities in the box, because I always like to see who's watching.
You just see the...
I couldn't see any royals yesterday.
No.
But we will see them, I think, towards the end of this week.
It will probably at the finals.
Yeah, I would have
that would be really good to see.
Yeah, and some famous people have been popping into the hairdressers in South London.
Have you ever spotted anyone in your barber's pool when you've gone?
No, to be honest, no. I wasn't looking, if I'm honest.
Well, this week, over the weekend, people at barbers in Crystal Palace were shocked when Rihanna and her boyfriend A$AP Rocky stopped by. So they
popped in.
Yeah, they popped in.
Can I be honest? I actually wouldn't recognise them, if I'm honest. Maybe Rihanna, I don't know, but I wouldn't spot A$AP Rocky.
Can we have a look at that picture again? Rihanna's just showing the picture. Oh, I see.
There we go. Rihanna's more of the popular one, but literally as soon as they got there, a mob of crowds of people came outside the barbershop. It wasn't planned. I don't think these barbers were planning to host Rihanna and A$AP Rocky.
Yeah.
He's been in town for Wireless Festival, and this is the first appearance we've seen of Rihanna since she apparently gave birth in May.
Right.
So she still hasn't announced that she's had a baby. So
I wouldn't have recognised her from that shot.
Well,
if you wear big enough sunglasses, you can go anonymous nowadays, can't you?
Well, do you look... I mean, if you're in a barbershop and you've got massive sunglasses on, the last thing you're going to do is look anonymous.
You do it if you decide you're going to wear a mask as well.
Yeah, I think
mask, sunglasses,
and
hat.
you're good. But thanks to social media, you can never get away with these little pit stops. Yeah.
No, actually, on the issue of celebrities disguising themselves to look a little bit anonymous, you know, it was on our flight out to Munich last Saturday. my bag didn't go, but who was on the flight was Sacha Baron Cohen.
Oh.
And his family, and he had the hat on and the face mask. And when you said that reminded me of that.
I think a lot of celebrities thought during the mask-wearing time that it was really nice because you could actually go out to places and not care terribly about whether you were recognised
I think some people want to keep it up, actually.
Yes, I think they
just
do.
keep on wearing the mask and saying incognito.
Yeah. Anyway, that's my minor brush with
That's very good.
Yeah.
You didn't go up and say, "Can I have a selfie?"
No, I wouldn't have done it, but I did really want to say, I love your work. But I didn't, because I just think, just leave him. He's with his family.
I know.
Was he with Isla Fisher, his wife?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. Well, yeah, if that's his wife, with the family and the kids.
Yeah. I always get
bless
worried meeting comedians in real life because I always think, are they going to be a bit more miserable? Because, you know, when you see them on TV,
you can.
But they're
there are
real
a couple
people,
of,
you know.
Yeah, but sometimes they're even rude, and you don't know whether you've just caught them at a bad moment because you've gone up and said hello, or whether they're always like that. So
tired of being funny.
Beware, yes, of meeting your idol, because sometimes your idol doesn't quite live up to it.
I know about that. Trust me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, because I've interviewed so many celebrities, and then I always have this expectation of who I think I'm going to meet, and then by the time...
you want to love them, don't you?
Yeah. And then when you meet them, you realise they're not that persona that sometimes they, you know...
You're going to tell us a name?
Yeah. Oh, Justin Timberlake.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I thought Justin Timberlake was going to be quite animated, excited, but sometimes I don't blame him because I was probably journalist number 7, just getting
That's
into
the trouble.
room.
You don't know when you caught them and they've just had enough or whatever. Well, we could talk to Stephanie about those sort of revelations all day. I don't know whether she'd come out with them all, but we will talk again. Thank you very much.
I'll be back.
We're racing towards 9 o'clock. We'll be back with you at the top of the hour. Right, looking ahead to today's weather, the UK is looking like another day of sunshine and showers, though some places will stay dry, so let's take a look at the detail. There'll be increasing amounts of sunshine across south-west England by lunchtime, with just a few lingering showers. Temperatures rising to 17 by midday. Light winds for all.
Sunny spells and scattered showers at lunchtime across southeast England and the London area. Still the odd heavy shower possible. Temperatures of 19 degrees Celsius.
To Wales now. Wales is going to see a mixture of sunshine and showers. Some could still be on the heavy side. Light winds and temperatures reaching 18 degrees.
Scattered showers for the Midlands, some possibly heavy in places. However, there will be plenty of sunny spells in between the showers, helping to lift temperatures to around 18 degrees Celsius, light winds as well.
North East England will see a mix of sunny spells and scattered heavy showers this lunchtime. Some sunshine developing at times too, temperatures slowly lifting to around 17.
It is a mixed picture for Scotland at midday. A mix of sunshine and showers, those heaviest and most frequent across the south of the country.
Scattered showers continuing for Northern Ireland, rather cloudy skies, but there will be some sunshine which will help lift temperatures to about 16. Little breezy along the north coast too.
Showers will clear eastwards through the rest of the day, allowing dry weather to move on. And that's how the weather is shaping up for the rest of Sunday.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know. The latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Chris Pincher faces 6 new claims of inappropriate behaviour days after his suspension as a Tory MP.
Good morning, it's 9 o'clock, yes it is, on Sunday the 3rd of July. This is Breakfast on GB News with Anne and Paul.
Yeah, very good morning to you. We're live across the whole of the UK, on TV, on radio. We are everywhere. Here's what you're waking up to this morning.
The former Conservative Deputy Chief Whip, Chris Pincher, has said he's seeking professional medical support amid new allegations of inappropriate behaviour stretching back more than a decade. It comes after he was suspended as a Tory following accusations he groped 2 men at a club in London.
The Foreign Office has condemned the exploitation of prisoners of war after 2 more Britons were captured by Russian forces. Andrew Hill and Dylan Healy are now facing the possibility of a Russian death sentence for what Moscow describes as mercenary activities during the conflict.
And it's finally time for the British Grand Prix. Ferrari's Carlos Sainz snatched pole position in a soaking qualifying session yesterday, whilst Brits Lewis Hamilton and Lando Norris will start 5th and 6th in today's race.
As ever, you can join in the conversation by dropping us a line, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet us at GBNews.
And of course, you can also subscribe to the GB News channel on YouTube to get all the latest on the big stories that we're all talking about.
Our top story then, Chris Pincher facing more allegations of misconduct and inappropriate behaviour today following his suspension as a Tory MP.
It comes after the MP for Tamworth said he is seeking professional medical support following accusations of groping 2 men whilst intoxicated at the Carlton Club in London.
Chris Pincher quit as Tory Deputy Chief Whip on Thursday and will now be subject to an investigation which he says he will fully cooperate with.
Well, for more on this and the latest on the other big political stories, John Ashmore joins us. He's editor of the political newspaper Cap X. Hello there, John. I mean, we just outlined there the fact that he's been, the whip has been suspended from him, so he is basically an independent MP. He resigned. He gave out a statement last night saying he was seeking professional medical support. I can only imagine that Number 10 would like to leave it there and turn the page, but that's not enough, is it?
No, absolutely not. And I think one of the big issues from a political point of view, obviously the main concern here is the allegations themselves and the substance of what went on. But from a communications and a political point of view, I think it's been handled pretty poorly. There was a kind of holding line put out earlier this week that, you know, oh, he's resigned and that's, you know, the issue. We've drawn a line under this issue. Well, I'm afraid that's not how these things work. Governments can't just declare that an issue is over if people don't think it is. And I think what you're going to find is this is going to rumble on. And it just adds to a very kind of toxic and destructive image of Westminster politics, really. We've had far, far too many of these sorts of allegations. And I should stress we are still talking about allegations here. But yeah, I mean, we've had too many of these kinds of allegations in just this year alone, actually. And I think people are starting to get a bit kind of almost desensitized to it. And I think that's a really dangerous thing. But yeah, I mean, the idea that this will just go away of its own accord, I think would be utterly wishful thinking. I think it's up to Downing Street to really get ahead of this and also to show that they're putting in place the kind of processes, disciplinary procedures that will stop anything like this happening again.
Do you think you'll resign? And if you do, when will that happen?
Well, he's already had the whip, the Tory whip, taken off him. And he put out this statement, as you said in the lead-in, saying he's seeking medical medical treatment and then hopes to continue as an MP. I think the difficulty for him is that we have this precedent with Neil Parish, the MP who was found watching pornography on his phone in the House of Commons. It's a very different kind of case to that. But the precedent was that Neil Parish did resign and there was a by-election. Clearly, again, talking purely in political terms, that would present a big difficulty to the government because they have not been doing well in by-elections of late. So they don't want that. But I really do think that that's a secondary concern to the actual substance of the allegations. I also think some of the language we tend to use around this is actually kind of inappropriate. You hear people talk about sort of sex pests. Oh, well, a pest, this isn't about someone being a pest or not. When we talk about, I'm not talking about Chris Pincher necessarily, but when we use this term, we're often talking about allegations of sexual assault. You know, this is deeply serious stuff, and talking about groping and sex pests, I think, sort of underplays that a bit, to my mind.
And it also seems to be underplayed. Chris Pincher himself putting out that statement saying he was seeking professional medical help. Well, I would think so, wouldn't you? Oh, that's what I would definitely expect. Why the words professional and medical were put together, I don't know. It's almost as though they're choosing their words too darned carefully, don't you think?
My take on that is that it's trying to sort of pathologise his conduct and say, oh, you know, I have a problem that needs treatment, and kind of reframes him as it's to show that, you know, he's trying to do something and take some concrete steps, and that, you know, there's some contrition there as well. I mean, it's very difficult for me to say what's going through his head and what's motivating his actions at the moment, but clearly it's a terrible look for the Conservative Party, for the government, but also for politics more broadly. Although I think it is really important to stress that, you know, most people who work, the vast majority of people who work in politics, vast majority of MPs are, you know, perfectly decent, public-spirited people, and we shouldn't tar everybody with the same brush because of the actions of, you know, a certain group of people.
John, really appreciate your time this morning. Thank you. John Ashmore, editor of CapX, GB Views at gbnews.uk.
And all morning we've also been talking about the cost of living crisis and the way it affects everybody in what they choose to do, how they choose to even eat. And we were mentioning earlier the fact that doctors are apparently very worried they're seeing children who actually suffer from malnutrition. And is that because they literally do not have enough money to buy food, or is it because the food they are buying or their parents are buying isn't particularly nutritious? Then we got on to Bubble and Squeak. Yes, and why it's called Bubble and Squeak. Stephen Torksy Lock says, we grew up with Bubble and Squeak. In our house, it was called that because of the effects it had on our tummies and the noises we made after eating it. Paul in Turling says, we're hosting a Ukrainian family in our annex right now, and we've been appalled and shocked at the contents of the enormous bags they bring home from nearby food banks because they're full of tinned and processed foods. Hardly any fresh food or vegetables, in spite of the fact that the Ukrainians really want to purchase and devour huge amounts of fresh food, which they purchase daily back in their home country.
Yeah, I would say when it comes to food banks, it's very difficult for them to get hold of fresh food, and sometimes they have to store it for long periods.
And if you've given to a food bank, so you immediately think, a couple of tins of that and a couple of bags of pasta or something. Yeah. You don't immediately think of a pound of fresh vegetables because it might take a while getting to the people who need it.
Indeed.
I guess that's why it's tinned and also, processed.
Yeah, and also there's a cost, an energy cost to keeping it refrigerated if you do get fresh
True, but that is a problem, though, isn't it? That means if you are going to a food bank, you're not necessarily getting the most nutritious stuff. But just because things are tinned doesn't mean they are not nutritious.
Yeah. Also, great to hear from you, Paul, in Turling, in Essex.
Yeah,
lovely.
Absolutely. Now, as you know, we love to read your views. We love to hear your views, and particularly tell us where you are. But sometimes we ring you back. And joining us now is Alistair John, who's a GB News viewer from Burton-on-Trent. Hello there, Alistair. Hello.
Good morning, Paul and Anne.
So what do you think to the cost of living crisis, and what's going to solve it?
The thing is that fuel is the lifeblood in the economy. And went to fill my vehicle up a couple of days ago. Quite a stark reality check when it came to nearly £100. I remember when the stuff used to be 32p a gallon, which is 4.6 litres. We're now, in imperial terms, at a £9 gallon. People used to drive. Yeah. People, well, there's 4.6. If you multiply it by £2 a litre,
yeah,
but the cost
it's
of
horrendous. And that feeds into what has been being said this morning about people can't afford to feed their families properly. They're trying to put bulk into their family as opposed to quality food. Yeah. But the price of fuel feeds into the transportation costs.
Well, Alistair, if Boris Johnson was here, he'd say, I hear you, Alistair, and that's why we cut fuel tax by 5p. And what would you say to that?
Not enough. When you've got a 20% tax, which is called VAT, on a fuel duty that you pay, more than 50% of the cost of a litre of fuel is tax, goes straight to the Treasury. The filling stations are used as a tax collection point. If they want to say they're cutting fuel down, then do a radical way of showing the price of fuel. Show what the cost of the fuel is and then show what the proportion of the tax is in the different levels on the billboard that shows the price. And then let's see what the public think of that.
How has this sort of, as what they call the cost of living crisis, affected you in other ways? You talked about the shock of filling up the car, and that is a shock when it comes over £100 nowadays. But in other ways, I mean, have you noticed your bills changing and rising? Have you noticed you're having to change the sort of your lifestyle and the way you shop and eat?
The Chancellor of the family, my wife, does the shopping, won't let me in the shops. She said, you know, she controls the budget on things like that. Reminds you of Margaret Thatcher a little bit. But the thing about going shopping and everything's going up. Manufacturers are talking the price of things up to get people anaesthetised to the fact that everything's going up in price. If people talk about it long enough, they'll accept it.
Yeah. Well, has your wife made different choices when she goes shopping? So when you go to the cupboard, something that you used to have, you know, isn't there anymore, or maybe there's less of it.
There's not a restriction on what's there, but she does keep an inventory now of what's in the various cupboards and the fridge, freezer and the fridge. So she knows exactly what she's got in stock.
Yeah, well, give her our love, Alistair. Thanks very much indeed for coming on GB News this morning. It's great to talk. Thank you.
Yeah, really appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thank you. Let's bring you up to date with the very latest headlines then. The Prime Minister and the Chancellor have outlined what they're calling the single biggest tax cut in a decade. Writing a joint article in The Sun on Sunday, they say Wednesday's rise in the national insurance threshold from just under 10,000 to over 12,500 will save 30 million British workers up to £330 a year.
The government wants security checks on new airport workers to be treated as a priority to prevent travel delays this summer. The Department of Transport claim counter-terrorist checks are being processed in record times. The shortages of baggage and security staff at hold-ups. We'll talk a bit more about that in just a moment.
Cyberbullying may be playing a key role in keeping mortality rates high amongst young people with asthma. A study from Nottingham University says that online abuse fuels a vicious cycle, meaning those with the condition trivialise it and then are less likely to take their medication.
Thousands of Australians have been ordered to evacuate parts of Sydney after torrential rain brought intense flooding. Vehicles have been left marooned and sports fields turned into lakes, with the Met Office warning the downpour will intensify over the next 2 days.
And I don't know about you, but this is the sort of time of year that if you haven't already booked a holiday, you really think now's the time. You start to go online and have a look and see what's what.
Or do you? Because we're hearing lots of stories about what's happening at the airport.
That's the trouble. I keep going online looking for a holiday and then thinking, I can't face it, because we all know the headlines: chaotic summer, people facing, you're taking the risk that if you fly, you're going to either be removed from your baggage, never see it again, or you're going to have to spend a night sleeping on, the floor of Terminal 2 at Heathrow Airport or something. The boss of Ryanair has said that passengers should get used to higher fares in the future and that the travel chaos could last years. For more on the chaos expected over the summer peak, let's join Simon Calder, who's joined us in the studio. Thanks for coming in. That's brilliant. I can't believe it as well that while the boss of Ryanair is saying get used to higher fares, the boss of EasyJet is taking his top executives on a jolly. They won't have to queue up or anything. They'll go on one of their own planes, I presume. He's taking them to a 5-star resort in Palma, the headline is, no holiday hell for the EasyJet executives.
Well, there's no holiday hell, actually, and it must be said, for the vast majority of people. So interesting, you were talking about going online for your holiday. Increasingly, people are actually going back to traditional travel agents.
Now, why?
Because they want somebody to be able to look in the eye and say, is my holiday going to be OK? And if it isn't, are you going to sort it out for me? And interestingly, just in the past few minutes, I've been talking to the chief executive of the Advantage Travel Partnership, who tells me that 50% of contacts from the public to her members are people saying, I've got my holiday booked, I've been reading all these stories about travel chaos, is it going to be OK? And 90% of the time, of course, it's going to be pretty much as booked. However, if you're in that 10% for whom it isn't, it's very annoying. I've just been out to Heathrow Airport this morning. British Airways cancelled 130 short-haul domestic and European flights. Now, they've cancelled most of those some weeks ago, so people knew about it. But it just shows you the kind of squeeze. That's probably 10,000 people not being on the flights that they booked. Down at Gatwick, we're seeing fresh problems, last-minute cancellations. EasyJet just cancelled the 11 o'clock to Malaga because of the strike by some of their cabin crew. Wizz Air also cancelling flights, British Airways at Gatwick as well. And Ryanair actually doing all right. They had a couple of cancellations yesterday, but that's what you would kind of expect on a normal busy Saturday.
So
not on the same scale as the other airlines.
So would an ordinary family who maybe before now would have actually gone online and pulled their whole package together, as it were, would they be better off going through a package holiday company?
Package holiday is absolutely the way to go, because then if anything goes wrong, if your flight doesn't go and there is literally no other seat, and for instance, British Airways have cancelled 4 flights to Nice from Heathrow today. Tomorrow there's 1 seat left. It will cost you £1,181.
Wow.
So therefore, if you had a package holiday booked and your flight was cancelled and there were no other available flights, you just get the whole cost of your package refunded. Instead, if you booked a rental car, a hotel, apartment or whatever separately, then the rental car owner or the hotelier will say, well, and your apartments here, the fact that you're not isn't our problem, you're not having your money back.
Yeah, so the liability rests with the airline and then you've got to kind of go to them.
Oh, well, sure, yeah, and it gets very messy very quickly. I mean, the underlying consumer rights are very strong for travellers, which is that an airline cancels your flight today, you are entitled to be flown to your destination on the same day on any airline, and if the only seat is British Airways at nearly £1,200, they have to pay it. But, of course, they're not actually going out and about to try and book people on other flights, so you're probably going to have a robust credit card and then claim it back.
Yeah, and claiming back can be quite difficult, as I've found out, because because some airlines don't have phone lines, and you get sent to automated chat bots and send an email here and you get nothing back.
Yeah, I mean, Paul's been separated from his luggage for a week now.
I know.
He's having a lovely holiday.
I'm so sorry. And
where is it?
It's in Munich.
It's in Munich at the moment. It's sending in postcards, I think, beginning to.
Right.
But yeah, you haven't even been able to speak to a human being about it.
No, I've. If you want to, I've had to physically go to the airport and go to speak to someone from Lufthansa there.
Yeah, and that is clearly ridiculous. Lufthansa facing all kinds of problems actually due to COVID infections. They've been cancelling a whole load of flights, as has Aer Lingus. because so many of their crew have COVID. So it will get back, but anybody who's watching who possibly can, and I know that not everyone can, but if you can take hand luggage only, that is just going to make your life so much easier.
And choose your airport?
The main problems are at Heathrow, Britain's busiest, Gatwick, Britain's second busiest. Manchester getting much better. They had long delays overnight, so if you were coming in from some destinations on TUI, you had delays of up to 6 hours, and so you were getting in the middle of the night rather than late on Saturday evening. Having said that, planes are going out okay. It's just delays build up during the day. So many shortages all the way across, from check-in staff to baggage handlers to refuelers to pilots and cabin crew, air traffic controllers. Any part of that very complex choreography that breaks down, and things start to unravel, and it's very difficult to get them back on course.
I must say, it's such good news for travel agents, isn't it, in a way? Because we're going back to them because we want an expert to guide us.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Well, they need a boost, don't they? And when we talk about travel chaos, you were very quick to say at the beginning, that it only affects 10% of people, and of course it's terrible for that 10%. But is that a bit of a misleading term, then, to keep writing travel chaos all the time? It's inconvenient, it's annoying, but not chaos.
Well, in places and at times it certainly looks chaotic. So, for instance, I've been in touch with someone who literally spent the night sleeping on a stretcher at Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris because her flight from Nice to Paris Charles de Gaulle came in too late for her connection to Manchester, and the Air France just said there are no hotel rooms in Paris available. So I call that chaos, but the vast majority of us are going to get where we're going to go. The solution through the summer will be, and we'll see more of this during the week, airlines cancelling even more of their flights in advance. Really bad news if you haven't booked your trip and you want to get a last-minute deal, because there won't be any.
There won't be them.
And then I can exclusively reveal 6 a.m. on Monday the 5th of September, everything will go all calm, because, of course, the holidays will be over.
Go back.
People will be back, So we'll talk about it then.
Yeah, well, no doubt we'll be talking about it all summer, actually.
Yes.
One of our headlines this morning has been saying that the government is saying that they want the training, the recruiting and training of security staff at airports to be prioritised. One would hope that would already happen.
Well, yes, and there's a huge blame game going on with the Transport Secretary, Grant Shapps, saying to the airlines, you've spent 2 years saying all you want to do is fly people around and to the airports as well. You just want people to be able to travel. As soon as they can, it all falls apart. But they say, look, actually, we suffered the most serious travel restrictions of any European country. We were crushed to sometimes 5%, sometimes 0% of normal activities, and we're now bouncing back. But certainly, as you've been saying in the headlines, the security clearance is hopefully going to be accelerated, but that's just one part of the puzzle for some employees. And of course, you can...
We've also been talking about it for about 3 months. I mean, surely they prioritised it 3 months ago.
Yes, and the other thing is, don't turn up too early. Amsterdam Airport is saying do not turn up more than 4 hours early. Bring cabin baggage only if you can. This is, at the moment, Europe's busiest airport, and the advice from Manchester Airport's new boss, for instance, turn up exactly 3 hours ahead, not a minute before, not a minute after.
Different airports, different times, different advice, but just got to stay informed.
Bring a tent and
I guess.
sleeping bags just in case.
Yeah, Simon,
okay,
thank you
Simon,
so much.
thanks so much for coming in and telling us that's worth knowing if you're making holiday plans. We'll take a quick break now, catch up with the weather as well if we can, and in a couple of moments, the latest royal stories with former royal correspondent Michael Cole.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GBNews.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go? Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Hello again. Yeah, 25 minutes past 9 already. Welcome back. It's GB News Breakfast with Anne and Paul.
Yeah.
Now, there are lots of royal stories around as well today, talking about the health of the Queen, but particularly, now, which one was it? The front page of the... That's right, the Sunday Times. Prince's honour for tycoon who bailed out his failed eco-village. Front page lead.
Yeah, this is a story about Prince Charles. The Times revealing he awarded, I should say, a royal honour to a businessman called Lord Brownlow after accepting millions of pounds of donations from him.
Yeah, so I think we're going to Michael Cole now, former BBC royal correspondent. Hello there, Michael. Hi, and thanks for joining us. I mean, I don't think there's any suggestion that Prince Charles has done anything wrong by accepting the money, but it's the rather dodgy link between accepting the money for his charity and then awarding an honour. Am I right?
Absolutely. It's what, in the jargon of the day, is the optics. It may not be illegal, it may not be improper even, but it looks absolutely awful. The problem is that over the years, the royal family, individuals within the royal family like to do these projects, but they always want somebody else to pay for them. And that's where the problem arises, because the juxtaposition of royalty and money and businessmen and honours, it gets them into all sorts of terrible trouble. And of course, Prince Charles no longer has his valet, who was promoted to be the chief executive officer of the Prince's Trust, Michael Fawcett. He's under investigation in another case, quite similar to this one by the sound of it. And he was his lightning rod. He used to take the flash and the flack, but he's no longer there. So the focus is going to be on Prince Charles. I mean, interestingly, on this very channel with Mr. Farage last Monday, we were talking about this and the case of the Saudi individual who was coming, the Qatari individual who was coming with bags of money, even in shopping trolley proportions, to see him and giving him money. And the staff at Clarence House said that was then, now is now. This will never, ever happen again. And I'd said on the programme, I'd said, this is absolutely a failure, an abject failure of his staff, keeping him away from things like this. Of course, it will never happen again, but it has happened. And listen, Paul and Anne, I mean, sitting here, the glory that was the Jubilee seems a very long way away now, doesn't it? We're back to in the mire of very unhelpful and negative stories, not least this story about Meghan Markle and the investigation this week into these allegations of bullying. I mean, very few things in this world are unique, but this is unique because what we had a case of two women who were working for Meghan Markle when she was part of the royal family, and they complained about bullying. And this was not investigated by the civil service. That would be normal. There was a private investigation funded by the royal household. And this week we learned that the results of this inquiry were not going to be made public. Lessons had been learned. The Human Resources Department had been notified, but we would never know what went on. Now, I think it says in the Bible, blessed are the peacemakers, and I think probably this is Buckingham Palace's attempts to make peace between the two brothers, William and Harry. And of course, William knows quite clearly that his brother is writing a book that will come out later this year, and he doesn't want to give him perhaps more provocation. In other words, don't poke the ginger bear sitting on his compound at the top of a hilltop in California, because obviously there's very bad blood between the two brothers.
I mean, I can see their point of view to a certain extent, you know, be pragmatic about it, because to come out with all of the details from what will be a pretty horrible-looking inquiry, even if it doesn't find anything concrete, it will still be tacky. There'll be details they'd rather not wash their dirty linen in public. I can sort of understand them thinking, let's not make things any worse. But what about the victims of the bullying, alleged bullying or whatever? What about justice and about transparency?
Absolutely, you're right on the money. Not for the first time in your life. It's a culture clash. You know, Meghan Markle came from a world of Hollywood. She was for 7 years the star of a successful television series. And in Hollywood, you know, you have lots of gophers, you have assistants, you give orders in perhaps a peremptory way. Those orders are carried out. Well, bringing that sort of attitude within the refined corridors of the royal household isn't going to go down very well, because the typists and the people in the office there used to be known by the rather genteel term of lady typists, they were called. Lady clerks, and they weren't used to being spoken to in that way, and they complained to Simon Case, who at the time was the private secretary of Prince William. He's since been translated, and he's the private secretary of the cabinet now, with even more bigger problems on his hands. And of course, those people will feel very much so that they perhaps haven't had their day in court, they haven't been vindicated. Lessons will be learned. Well, we hear that far too much, don't we, in all sorts of contexts. And I think, yes, let's have some transparency. Let's find out what did happen, and if there is blame to be laid, let it be laid. That's not going to happen now, and maybe that's for the best, because there are a few worse things in the world than seeing brothers at war. And quite clearly, there is a grave differences between Prince William and Prince Harry. And of course, at one time, they couldn't have been closer. And you and I know that this would have upset their mother, Princess Diana, very much so.
Yeah.
Terribly.
Michael, really good to talk to you this morning. Thank you for joining us. Really appreciate it. That is former royal correspondent Michael Cole.
Yeah, do stay with us. We've got lots more to come, including Aidan and Stephanie will be joining us, and we'll be mixing together that amazing blend, once again, of sport and showbiz.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go? Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Welcome back.
Yes.
Yeah, 9:35.
9:35. 25 to 10, however you want to put it. It is GB News with Anne and Paul. Good to have you with us this morning.
Now, here's an interesting one for you, because the Metropolitan Police was put into special measures this week. We all heard that, thought, how do you put a police force into special measures? Interesting one. But of course, it was after the string of controversies that has rocked that particular police service.
Yeah, joining us now is William Merritt, a private investigator and former New Zealand police officer who claims that the Met's credibility has been in question for over a decade. William, thanks for speaking to us. Really appreciate it. You think that placing the Met in special measures then is necessary?
Yes, I think under the circumstances, given what's happened over the last 10 years, it has been that they need to be closely looked at.
I mean, first we heard after Stephen Lawrence and everything that they were institutionally racist. And then we've heard other allegations they've got institutional problems generally, sexist, misogynistic in all sorts of ways. Is that unusual, though? I mean, you've got experience of a police force in New Zealand as well. And of course, we have many other police forces in this country. Is it unusual in the Met?
Very unusual. I was never in the Met Police myself, so I can't speak for the Met Police. I was head coach of the Metropolitan Police rugby team for a couple of years, so I lived with some of the Metropolitan Police officers. But as far as the special measures, I can see that so much has happened, and of course my involvement was the historical sexual and indecent assault allegations. And I think it all came about in 2011 when the director of the Public Prosecution Service put out a directive to the police that they were to believe the complainants absolutely.
Yeah, I know. I remember eyebrows being raised at the time that any police officer would say that come forward and tell us your story and you will be believed.
Yes.
And of course, we know that ended up disastrously because the person who came forward and was believed was a complete con man. And they resulted in very, very serious and terrible allegations against people who actually died before they could be exonerated. Operation U-Tree, things like that have called police methods to be questioned seriously. Special measures, what exactly do you think that means?
Well, at the moment, of course, they don't have a police commissioner, do they? So special measures mean that they have to have someone overseeing them to advise them as to how they should be conducting themselves on a day-to-day basis. I feel a bit sorry. I never met Cressida Dick, but I feel a bit sorry for her because she did try and rectify things in 2018, and she changed that directive. And she said that they have to have an open mind when investigating any complaints. And she said that whilst complainants will be encouraged to come forward and we will believe you, we must also tell them that that their complaint, not them, their complaint will be investigated because that's our duty. Now, I think that was good, and I think that was an attempt on her part to try and get things back as they've always been. That 7 years was a terrible time, and particularly between 2014 and 2017, when so many allegations were made and so many failed. But the odd one, unfortunately, was convicted and later found that the convictions were unsafe as well. So
How do you, I mean, I know a lot of people, when Cressida Dick resigned, ultimately, a lot of people were pleased and a lot of people felt that she had been treated unfairly. But you can only imagine what an impossible job it must be, being the head of such a large police force. Is it too large?
No, I don't think it's too large at all.
So how does a new incoming commissioner actually clean it out, root and branch? How do you do that?
Yeah. What would you do if you were commissioner?
There'd be a lot of people out there say, well, he'll never be commissioner. My personal thoughts are, I think you need to bring someone from outside in. Because if you think about it, the people that will take over are people that have been part of that system.
Yeah.
And how do you change it? It's very, very difficult. Some years ago, they were talking about, and they did for a while, they brought in, I think it was the head of the police in one of the American states. I can't remember which one it was, New York or one of those. He came over and how he'd cleaned up the police force. He came over and gave advice. Whether it was taken up properly, I don't know. But that's what they need, is someone to come in from the outside.
Yeah. Just to give the Met's point of view, they did give a statement after that announcement was made about special measures. It said, "We recognise the cumulative impact of events and problems that the Met is dealing with. We understand the impact this has had on communities and we share the disappointment. They're determined to be a police service Londoners can be proud of, and they're talking to the inspectorate about the next steps."
I think that's fair.
Yeah.
Fair comment, and that's what they have to do.
But it'll take a while, won't it?
But I did feel sorry for Cressida Dick. I didn't know her, but she had a poisonous chalice there, really, because she inherited something that was quite.
Yeah.
But she did her best to try and change that. But in something so large, you're going to have a lot of enemies, aren't you?
Yeah.
Well, we're running out of time. Thanks you very much for coming in today and telling us your thoughts. In a couple of moments, we're going to be joining Stephanie and Aidan as well, and also asking about how your relationship can help your mental health. In the meantime, shall we catch up with some headlines?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's bring up to what is happening this morning. It's 9:41. The Prime Minister and the Chancellor have outlined what they're calling the single biggest tax cut in a decade. This is in the Sun on Sunday. They say Wednesday's rise in the national insurance threshold from just under 10 grand to just over 12.5 grand will save 30 million British workers up to £330 a year.
The government wants security checks on new airport workers to be treated as a priority to prevent travel delays this summer. Department of Transport claim counter-terrorist checks are being processed in record times now as shortages of baggage and security staff fuel hold-ups.
Cyberbullying may be playing a key role in keeping mortality rates high amongst people with asthma. A study from Nottingham University says online abuse fuels a vicious cycle, meaning those with the condition trivialise it and can be less likely to take their medication.
And thousands of Australians have been ordered to evacuate parts of Sydney after torrential rain brought intense flooding. Vehicles have been left marooned and sports fields turned into lakes, with the Met Office warning the downpour will intensify over the next 2 days. Now to relationships. Thorny subject, but interesting because apparently your other half plays a fundamental role in your life, obviously, and can have a positive but also sometimes a negative effect on our mental health.
So what's the best way to keep a relationship healthy and happy? We're joined by psychologist Dr. Pam Spur, who will help explain just how to maximise the benefits of our personal relationships. Morning to you, Pam.
Good morning.
Some people love being a couple and living every moment together. And some people seem to survive very successfully as a couple, living an awful lot of their time apart. So what's the key? What is there a formula?
Well, good question, Anne, because the key is to find what works for you as a couple, what empowers both of you, what gives you harmony. In the article that I know you've read and I've read, it talks about self-expansion. Now, we're on a spectrum in our relationship from self-expansion, where you both help each other grow, which helps your well-being, or self-depletion, where your relationship takes all the wrong kind of energy, like you're always angry with each other, and you deplete your well-being and your mental health. So yes, somewhere in that line between expansion and depletion, most of our relationships fall.
It's not just personal relationships, professional relationships as well, right? In fact, all kinds of relationships.
Exactly. All relationships impact us in various ways. And what I say is, if you think about the 3 R's, respect. So you have respect for yourself in whatever relationship it is, where you will set your boundaries on that work colleague who maybe asks you to do too much and piles work on you. And also you respect them. So respect is key. Also, realism. You have to be realistic about what you can expect. Let's say in your romantic relationship, you hope your partner will be your savior, that they will make your life better. But that is just unrealistic, and that leads to unhealthy expectations. And the 3rd R that's so important is responsibility. In any relationship, you take responsibility for your part in it. Don't get caught up in the blame game where you're always finger pointing and saying, you're the one who's the problem. You're the one who causes this and that. It's always a two-way street when you have challenges in relationships, whether at work or at home. And you have to be prepared to say, okay, I did that wrong. I take responsibility for that. And here's my solution.
There is such a thing, isn't there, as pre-marital counselling. I know I've read an article about in the American military, if you're both in the American military and you want to get married, they insist that you go to pre-marital counselling to make sure you have the same objectives in life and that you know things about each other that you might not in the sort of lovely warm glow of romance. You might not actually ask, like, you know, do you both want children? Do you both want to live in a certain part of the country? Do you both want to go on working forever? Things, honestly, fundamental things like that just discussing bring you together or actually show up the flaws in your relationship. Would you recommend pre-marital counselling?
Well, first off, if I may say, with the military, it was a very good idea because military relationships had a higher level of divorce because of the stress of maybe you're not sent off with your spouse somewhere. They're sent off to one part of the world, you're the other part of the world, long separations, or even if you're the one at home and your partner is a soldier. So that made a lot of sense. But when you think about it, we get a lot of pre-marital guidance, say if we're going to have a church wedding. Very often the pastor, the minister will minister some advice in the run-up to your wedding. Families often, well, they can give you the wrong advice, but families and good friends, in a sense, often, if you're having worries about your relationship, they will urge you to talk to your partner. And essentially, that's what premarital counseling is. It's to flag up those deal makers and breakers, like having children, where you want to live, how long you want to work, all those things you raised, Anne.
Really good to get your thoughts this morning, Pam. Thanks for that advice. Really appreciate it. Pam Spur there.
Yeah,
thank you.
Joining us.
It's an interesting concept, isn't it, premarital counselling?
Yeah, in the military as well. Wow.
Well, as she said,
they
started it in the military, particularly because they have a high rate of divorce. But actually going through a thing, where it starts out as a question and answer thing, and then you talk through the question, how you've each answered the questions and answers with this counsellor. And it just starts conversations going that you might never do, as I say, when you're in the throes of romance and planning a wedding and
the
things like that.
questions and answers that you never had on the first date.
No, it would be a bit premature, wouldn't it, on the first date? To say, do you want children and where do you want to live for the rest of your life?
Yeah.
Do you want to go on working forever? I don't know. It's all of those things. I just find it... And apparently, since they brought in premarital counselling, it has made a complete difference to their successful marriage rate.
Fair play.
Apparently, in the American military. Fascinating, isn't it? Stephanie and Aidan have joined us. Hello.
Hello.
You were nodding there.
I'm all for premarital counselling. I think it's, you know, especially for young people, I think it will kind of work because I think most couples always go in once the relationship's kind of at the point of no return. So at the beginning, you can kind of air things out and then you've both got that vision and you can work together.
The last resort otherwise, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, you know, you flag up from the beginning without being confrontational or doom and gloom. You flag up from the beginning where you might have actually quite a few differences. And either you work through them or you accept.
Come in the first few dates anyway.
No, because you don't attack those thorny issues like money
who's going to make the money? Am I the woman who's going to have the babies and then have to go back to work? All of those sort of things, stay-at-home fathers. You can imagine all of the horrible practical things that you would never want to talk about when you're all loved up and planning a wedding.
I think I've been a bit guilty on dates, though. I think it's the journalist in me. I just want to know everything.
Right. Well, if you will sit there in the date going like this, writing it down, that is a shorthand. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Maybe that's why I'm still single. But no, I go in for the kill. I'm like, don't waste my time.
I was reading earlier about this new Netflix series about a guy who set up a revenge porn website, and he hacked sort of not very nice pictures of women from various things. He hacked them, he stole them, and then he put them on his website. And then he realised that there was a market in revenge porn. So then he added their names and addresses and made it a form of revenge. And it became a website where if you wanted to get your own back on your ex and you had a compromising picture of them, you could put it on this website. It started to make him a fortune in the States. Anyway, he made a mistake and he victimised one girl whose mum decided she was going to track him down and tell the FBI and expose him. She's got him jailed.
Oh, good.
So it's a series a bit like the Tinder Swindler.
Oh, yeah.
Where a mum who just wouldn't be told no, and the FBI kept telling her, look, we can't track him. He uses aliases. He knows his way around. And she said, her husband was a barrister, so she had a bit of legal help. And she absolutely went for the kill, and she got him jailed.
Good. I think dating's so complex these days, especially with social media and dating apps. Like, you don't know if you're actually talking to a catfish or someone genuine. There's so many options, so...
But it dehumanises people anyway. You go through profile after profile after profile. It's like looking for a pressure washer on the Argos app or something. You know, you realise you've gone through 20 or 30 people in probably about 10, 15 seconds. And they're all human beings.
Yes, some of them may be really lovely and you've just swiped them.
Exactly. It's very superficial.
Did you find that pressure washer?
Have you found your perfect?
I'm not lucky enough to have a garden to use it on.
Now, give us the highlights of today's sporting
Look, Wimbledon was a huge night last night, of course. I know you were heavily involved, Nick, so you're watching it. We saw a mammoth scrap last night between, literally at times, it looked like it was going to go that way.
I thought they were going to leap over the fence at each other.
Yeah, Nick Kyrgios and Stefanos Tsitsipas.
Relationship.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, it was kind of, it's very adversarial. It was kind of, you know, echoes of Connors and McEnroe in the early 80s when they really didn't like each other and used to wind each other up. There was a call from Kyrgios for Tsitsipas to be defaulted, which effectively means being disqualified because he lobbed a ball towards the crowd. There's Rafa Nadal there, by the way, for the benefit of our radio viewers. He won in straight sets quite comfortably, not without a little bit of controversy as well, with Sonogo calling him to the net.
In fact, are we going to see him go to the line here?
He calls him. This
is at the end of the match for those listening on radio. They do shake hands and then they have a very long chat.
Yeah, they do. I mean, Nadal actually apologised after and said, look, maybe I shouldn't have called him to the net. Maybe it was a little bit humiliating. But just getting back to Kyrgios, though, he won in four sets. Fantastic play in terms of the actual tennis. But, I mean, so much went on during the match, and he wasn't defaulted in the end, Tsitsipas, but it led to Kyrgios being constantly chipping away at the umpires. Tsitsipas said after he was very angry, he said that it was constant bullying throughout, not just of the officials, but borderline on him as well, because Tsitsipas was actually taking shots and maybe not landing on the line or where he wanted to go, and Kyrgios was actually sarcastically clapping. But incredibly, the crowd seemed to be on his side on court one.
Do you see his point of view? Because he seems like a bit of the bad boy of tennis.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's histrionics in a way. I think we all like the theatre of sport. There is an element of that, but I do think he's taking it too far. And I think he was quite lucky not to be disqualified himself yesterday. However, the guy has immense talent. I mean, it's the demons within him that are stopping him progressing and being the player he should be. The best he's done, I believe, is quarterfinals in 2014. That's 8 years ago. He's 26 years old. Everyone thought probably at quarterfinals at the age of 18, probably thought, well, it's only a matter of time before he makes that leap with that tremendous ability to becoming a serial Grand Slam winner. But 8 years on, he's still not done it. Maybe this could be the year.
What do you think those demons are?
I just think he's just constantly. If you watch him through a match, any match, he's always been the same. He's guilty of code violations. He uses foul language. Some would say the officials are a little bit too lenient with him. It's almost like, Nick's a little bit like that. That's just how he is. But maybe it's good. Some people think it's good for the sport. But he's always talking to himself, and you wonder to yourself, well, can he actually be concentrating and fully focused on a game against a top 10 rival? I mean, Tsitsipas yesterday was fourth, and yes, that was an aberration in a way because he doesn't normally play that well against the top opponents. He doesn't have a winning record against any of the top 5 or 6.
You wonder how they're coached, don't you? Because they always say that the whole difference in the change came
about why we started to produce winners at Wimbledon was that coaching them about self-confidence and self-belief. You have to envisage. It's visualisation. You have to visualise how you're going to win. And maybe he's being coached to, if you feel angry, use that anger.
Yeah, well, it certainly worked yesterday. I mean, he was set down, and normally in that situation on a show court like Court 1 against Tsitsipas, who's been in decent form, 4th seed, as I say, very good pedigree. Normally, that would see him crumble, but he didn't. He rattled off 3 sets after that. He looked very, very good on it, very strong on his serve. Some of the shots from distance and from tight angles looked absolutely fantastic. He was hitting the lines, and he was entertaining the crowd as well. So who knows how far he could go, but still, you've got Nadal looking very good. He produced his best performance yesterday against Sonego. Djokovic is on court today, and it's obviously the British hopes we've got as well, Heather Watson and Cam Norrie. Superb performances for them so far. We're hoping they can carry on a bit further.
And Tom Daley and his husband Dustin were in the Royal Box watching.
Exciting this week. I've been trying to do a bit of celeb watching with the tennis scene and who's who, but I thought Tom Daley would have been more at the Pride celebrations, but it was good to see him in the box with his husband.
Well, if you get a ticket, if you get an invitation to the Royal Box, you think, oh,
you can't say no.
I've done the Pride March before I go to Wimbledon. Who do we need to talk about before we run out of time? Lindsay Lohan has married.
Yeah, she has. She was like the former bad girl of Hollywood, but she's really turned her life around over the past few years. And yesterday was her birthday, and she put on Instagram that she's married to her husband. What's his name? Bader Shamas.
So, but we knew they were engaged.
Yeah, back in November.
But she has just decided to announce on her birthday that they've actually now got married.
Recently, all these
very unusual celebrity behaviour, isn't it?
Well, to be honest, it's like Taylor Swift, what we were discussing on Friday, where she's had this secret engagement. I think a lot of these celebrities are starting to keep their relationships a bit private, and maybe that's what makes it last longer. And stop people prying into it.
Well, thank you both for joining us. It's lovely to see you again.
Really
Have a lovely Sunday afternoon.
Yeah.
The weather looks quite hopeful too. But that's it from us. So
Yeah.
do stay tuned, because coming up next, the political correction. Right, looking ahead to today's weather, the UK is looking like another day of sunshine and showers, though some places will stay dry, so let's take a look at the detail. There'll be increasing amounts of sunshine across south-west England by lunchtime, with just a few lingering showers. Temperatures rising to 17 by midday. Light winds for all.
Sunny spells and scattered showers at lunchtime across southeast England and the London area. Still the odd heavy shower possible. Temperatures of 19 degrees Celsius.
To Wales now. Wales is going to see a mixture of sunshine and showers. Some could still be on the heavy side. Light winds and temperatures reaching 18 degrees.
Scattered showers for the Midlands, some possibly heavy in places. However, there will be plenty of sunny spells in between the showers, helping to lift temperatures to around 18 degrees Celsius. Light winds as well.
North East England will see a mix of sunny spells and scattered heavy showers this lunchtime. Some sunshine developing at times too. Temperatures slowly lifting to around 17.
It is a mixed picture for Scotland at midday. Mix of sunshine and showers, those heaviest and most frequent across the south of the country.
Scattered showers continuing for Northern Ireland, rather cloudy skies, but there will be some sunshine which will help lift temperatures to about 16. Little breezy along the north coast too.
Showers will clear eastwards through the rest of the day, allowing dry weather to move on. And that's how the weather is shaping up for the rest of Sunday.
Start off your GB News Sunday with Stephen and Anne at breakfast from 6 a.m. At 10, join the political correction. From 12 till 6, it's Alistair, Darren and Nana. At 7, join Free Speech Nation for a laugh that won't be cancelled. At 9, it's Mark Dolan Tonight, followed by Headliners. That's Sunday on GB News.